Everyone dreams at least once of becoming a hero strong enough to defeat the Demon Lord. That dream is as unlikely as winning a lottery jackpot, since it first requires overwhelming power just to beat the Demon Lord in combat. Even defeating the Demon Lord means nothing if the hero cannot make it home alive afterward. Some heroes push their power past its limits, burning themselves out until they are remembered only after death. Even a hero who survives and returns home safely often becomes feared for holding strength greater than the Demon Lord itself, and without careful judgment, fame turns into disaster. Faced with all these outcomes, a young swordsman is left wondering what path he should actually take. He stands quietly in a grand hall, lost in thought. He belonged to a team of 5 SSS rank adventurers known as the Children of Miracles, who once fought as part of the Demon Lord punitive force. 5 years pass. The story shifts to Alvenice, capital of the Albein Kingdom, where a small guild house called the Silver Water Jug Arbor sits on the 12th Street. Inside, the guild's owner, a young man, sits alone as his elf maid brings out a bottle of fine wine. Though he reminds her not to call him master while they're on the shop floor, the maid teases him about what she should call him instead, hinting that being addressed a certain way might come with its own kind of punishment. She scolds him for waiting 5 years, revealing that beneath her disguise she is the very Demon Lord they once defeated. She recalls how she once stole a talisman from him, and he promised to let her earn it back after 5 years passed. He introduces himself simply as Dick Silver, insisting he isn't a hero, just someone who tagged along with his teammates, true to her word. The Demon Lord arrived at his guild a month earlier and has been working there as a maid ever since. She insists she won't accept anything less than him understanding the depth of her feelings she has carried for years. She warns that without the talisman she could be defeated and humiliated, though Dick jokes that a duel would be a far more interesting way to settle things. A hooded stranger enters the guild, and she quickly composes herself to greet the newcomer. The customer requests the shop's special blend and simply asks for milk. The visitor is revealed to be a recognized regular of the Silver Water Jug Arbor, sighing as they wonder whether this guild can truly handle the request they've come to make. The visitor gets straight to the point, asking Dick to annul the engagement between First Royal Princess Manarina and Marquis Vinsperclit. The girl reveals herself as the princess's maid-in-waiting, explaining that the princess does not wish for the marriage and is even considering self-harm if forced to obey her father's decision. The House of Vinsperclit holds enormous influence in the Senate, and marrying into such power is normally expected of royalty. But Marquis Jean Vinsperclit is known as an unprincipled man who fathers children with women across the kingdom. The maid grows desperate, asking if such an unwanted engagement can really be cancelled. Insisting that refusal should be possible, Dick calmly explains that the guild can indeed annul the engagement, though he needs to ask a few questions first before accepting the request. The elf maid speaks up, saying she understands the princess's feelings and asks if a path to cancel the engagement truly exists. She explains that the royal family can refuse the marriage through a duel, since the Marquise's adventurer scale combat strength is estimated near 1200, while the princess's is only around 700. The adventurer scale combines health, mana, skills, and connections into a single measurable score, one that cannot be argued against once calculated. Dick points out that this plan only works if the princess has no backup, then calls the maid over as customer to order milk. The maid questions whether he is finally taking her earlier scolding seriously by ordering milk instead of alcohol. He silently vows to solve any request brought to his guild, using whatever method necessary, all the while doing it without ever standing out. He offers the maid a drink on the house, but she stares back in confusion. She protests, insisting the strange phrase he used was meant as a password, not an insult toward her age. He gently invites her to take up his offer instead, admitting she must be thirsty after standing to argue with him. She accepts the cold drink, admitting quietly that it tastes good. The maid Lin proposes the guild's plan, challenge Marquis Weinberg to a duel and win it. The elf assures her the guild will take every measure to secure victory, telling her to relay to the princess that she has nothing to worry about. She reveals the true weapon, the silver mug, capable of completing any request without leaving a trace, promising the princess will remain unharmed, trusting fully in Dick and the silver mug. Lin agrees to see the plan through. Dick tells the elf maid to give the special drink to the young lady customer instead, prompting her to question if he is sure. The maid apologizes for earlier treating the customer like a child with milk, then presents the elegant drink, describing it as a rare beverage only served in this shop. The princess's maid admits the milk was good too, but confesses she would have been more touched if this special drink had been offered to her first. As payment for the completed request, Dick simply asks the maid to pour him another drink from the barrel. At the dueling ground, the outcome is finally revealed as the Marquis falls, defeated. The victor is revealed to be Princess Manarina Lila Albein herself, who fought and won the duel using the strength secretly granted to her. Back at the guild, Dick reveals the reward he requested from the princess: fresh vegetables, cooked by a woman named Aileen Sherperia. Dick insists hunting demons for proper reward is simply the Adventurer's Guild duty, brushing off any credit, while the maid teases that since the Marquis lost. The maids gossip that Princess Manarina likely won't accept any new proposals now that she has learned of Master's charm despite her renowned beauty. A sound from the kitchen interrupts them, and they scramble to keep the customer from spotting Dick inside, realizing they forgot to hang the getting ready sign. Dick steps out to greet the visitor personally, asking how he may help despite the shop being mid-preparation. Two hooded figures stand at the door, one declaring that the person in charge of the silver mug must show himself, while the other pulls out a familiar talisman. The hood falls away to reveal a strikingly beautiful but fierce-eyed young woman, who orders them to bring out Dick Silver. 5 years after defeating the Demon Lord, the former hero's party stood before the king to receive their reward for saving the kingdom. Among them stood 4 young women, each carrying their own memory of the battle and the man beside them. Dick Silver, the quiet member of the group, was asked to name his wish, though the king noted he seemed to have little to show for his role in the victory. His companion Cody insisted Dick had done more than he let on, and the others agreed, admitting they had struggled just to keep pace with him during the fight. The king pressed him to speak honestly about his contribution, and Dick finally prepared to reveal what he wanted most. His wish was simple. He asked for permission to open his own guild in the royal capital, one where he could work without drawing attention. The king agreed, offering him a rundown guild house on the neglected 12th Street, the only building available that matched Dick's wish to stay unnoticed. Dick accepted without hesitation, content with a place far below what his strength deserved. Years later, a noblewoman named Mylarka pushed back against another woman's hostility toward Dick, recalling a duel where the odds should have favored his side completely. That woman was Mylarka Iris, once part of the Demon Lord's punitive force, and she knew only Dick's enhancement magic could explain what she had witnessed. The story shifted to Manarina, a brilliant young professor known for her sharp mind and devastating magic. Rumors had given her a fitting nickname, the Beautiful Disaster. Mylarka revealed she was Manarina's teacher, though the princess could not use magic at all, prompting questions about how close the two women truly were. Manarina confessed she had lied about her origins, admitting Dick had already seen through her. Dick was accused of being a beast, the method behind Manarina's victory carrying a hidden catch. To keep her new reputation intact, Manarina needed Dick's enhancement magic cast on her once more. He described luring her in like an antlion waiting in its trap. Mylarka called him a pervert, though he insisted he had no ulterior motive. Aileen greeted Mylarka warmly after time apart. Alone with her thoughts, Mylarka told herself Dick would never be interested in her. Mylarka's memory drifted back to a night at the bar with Aileen, a moment that had stayed with her longer than she expected. Aileen recalled getting sick from her first taste of alcohol, embarrassed that Dick had ended up rubbing her back to help her through it. Mylarka questioned whether the story was true, though she admitted it wouldn't surprise her if Aileen and Dick were actually together, since Aileen had every right to choose her own partner. The group turned the conversation back on Dick, teasing him for being too passive and pointing out that even Princess Manarina had grown attached to him, despite his dull demeanor. Manarina grew flustered when reminded that her feelings for Dick had started the moment she first saw him 5 years earlier. She insisted her position as guild master had nothing to do with pity, recalling how Dick had never forgotten her name since their first meeting at the palace. She praised him for staying modest despite clearly being an essential part of the force that brought down the Demon Lord. Dick admitted he once thought his effort was too obvious to hide, remembering how touched he was when she handed him a delicate drink instead of treating him like someone pitiful. Manarina told him there was no need for formality between them, offering to repay any help he ever needed from the royal family. Dick smiled and told her he would count on that promise someday, and she agreed without hesitation. Mylarka decided she should visit Dick more often herself, prompting Manarina to remind her there was no reason to stay angry at him. The scene shifted back to the bar where Dick sat among friends while Mylarka watched quietly. He brought her an herb drink, glad they had made up after their earlier tension. Mylarka noted how thoughtful he always was, then asked directly why he avoided standing out. Dick brushed off the question, insisting there wasn't much reason behind it, though he clearly always chose the roundabout path. The story shifted to his childhood, where a boy stronger than most had been raised in a quiet countryside villa, and told never to use his strength. One day, a magical beast attacked the village. The boy defeated it alone using nothing but a broken branch, saving his friends in the process. He walked away without a single wound, an outcome no one expected. After that day, the child was left completely alone. Villagers began treating the boy as dangerous, isolating him so completely that staying on the mountain became easier than facing them, a misfortune Mylarka called being late to meet people like himself. Dick admitted this was still just a made-up story, and she praised the child for having the courage to act instead of standing by and doing nothing. He reasoned that preparing carefully in advance would let him avoid standing out. Yet he refused to waste the strength he had been given by hiding it completely. Mylarka poured him a drink, joking that destruction magic might rain down tomorrow given the situation, while she insisted she should be the one serving him tonight. She told him to drink and forget everything that had happened, promising to forgive whatever careless things he had said. The group stood together as friends, bound by history none of the others fully understood. 1 week later, Mylarka's university work came up again, her reputation for destroying test buildings with ruthless efficiency staying intact as ever. Back at the bar, Dick sat drinking alone until a hooded figure asked to take the empty seat beside him and ordered a cold ale. The stranger recognized his magic instantly, connecting it to the help he had once given the princess. She was Cody Elstead, the only male member of the Demon Lord Punitive Force and someone Dick considered a true hero, surprised that his enhancement magic still felt so familiar to her. They joked about being regulars at the same bar, teasing that the quality of the ale was the only reason either of them kept coming back. Cody's tone shifted, admitting she doubted he'd come only to drink, confessing she felt outmatched by him and that this was a request only he could fulfill. She asked directly for his help defeating the fire dragon, an unexpectedly dangerous task that left him wondering how he could manage it without drawing attention. The appeal extends Dick at the association to defeat a flame worm, but doubt emerges regardless his skill. Details shows the worm lately seemed beside the metropolis, creating pressure and worry. A follower offers as Dick assesses the condition and weighs the dangers present. An A rank party earlier faltered, expressing the dragon's power and the threat of the task. Roll surpasses wariness, going Dick to agree and ready to answer. Talk shows a link to the king, making Dick to doubt greater help. Ada girl linked to nobility emerges, seen as the king's child joined by companions. They reach at the silver jug, coming Dick silently within the association hall. Single presents self as a royal warrior, as the location permits secrecy lacking, showing name. Watching carefully, Dick spots a likeness among Pear's sisters, indicating a secret family bond. The team nears Dick, indicating no reason to dispatch association people outside, as speaking him straightforwardly, power is disclosed across assured assertions, expressing their powers match a rank fighter's. They appeal details rather of help, rejecting to depend on his energy regardless the threat. Strain stands as motives turn steady, highlighting devotion and resolve determined. They choose to pursue the flameworm bodies, guided by duty and private plans. Dick hears his partnership is suggested, but he discovers the account partial and stays doubtful. Focus changes to plan, highlighting the reason to examine the dragon's conduct earlier fighting. A guide regarding beating the flameworm is showed, giving training to help their strategy. Suspicion emerges about its value, although its source from a scholar pulls attention. Discovering its author prevailed regardless lesser level, they start re-evaluating its use. Suspicion moves as the notebook's assertions appear doubtful, rendering its material hard to faith. Wonders arise regarding the author's power as beating the worm solo emerges improbable. Cautious review starts, showing unknown but specific details inside the writing. Attention builds as the study displays accurate, realizing outside usual practice. They find particular patterns of the worm. Seeing the records could grip sound knowledge. Dick shows he had previously studied the flame worm, startling the companions with earlier awareness. He states the threat stays great, but the journal can yet help their task. Focus changes as he weighs boosting the warrior earlier the hunt starts. The team recovers attention as Dick stays easy, behaving informally regardless the grave condition. Instructions are created as strain softens somewhat, although readiness for the next fight proceeds. Dick offers unique drink from a mighty creature, describing it boosts power across mana. He urges its apply with supplies, keeping a calm manner as companions respond variously. Doubt emerges, but the team carefully receives and tries what is offered. Following sampling, strain eases as the results show beneficial and suitable. With faith growing, focus comes to the journal. Although terms for its apply stay uncertain, conditions are set, as the worm intent be restrained as evidence is reverted to the association. Reward is considered, but the attention stays on finishing the hunt itself. Moment moves and readiness progresses towards carrying the prepared plan. They examine the dragon's conduct, learning habits as questions regarding victory stay, Worry builds over the powerful attention on the worm, suggesting that greater motives back the task. Toubatsu shows a private aim, seeking to encounter someone she strongly respects as requesting progress. She remembers a powerful warrior motivated by her successes and wanting to attain the equal level. Her real reason appears. Seeking awareness to alter her condition and guard her parent, resolve lands as preparations maintain, with attention set on the coming hunt. The team recognizes her determination, gaining fresh reason as the task pulls nearer. Dick palms item over, preparing a last stay earlier the task starts. A mark is suggested to be set on Toubatsu, described as needed for the coming hunt. They consent to continue in a secluded chamber, making the procedure is done cautiously. Responses differ as the condition lifts strain and unease between the team. Dick stays steady, viewing it as defense, as silently watching events occurring close. The procedure starts as Toubatsu readies, realizing the value of performing the appeal. She takes piece of her attire, expressing mild awkwardness but keeping calm. The marking begins, making unease as she bears the process. Agony worsens momentarily as the showing is finished, needing her to stay yet. Later, she improves, although sudden results depart her startled and unclear. Worry remains as the team thinks on latest incidents, as strain silently mounts about their task. The following morning, they reach the woods, depending on the learned strategy and collected awareness. Resolve hardens as Toubatsu readies self inwardly for the trial forward. At the dragon's den, readiness finishes and the hunt starts as the danger ultimately emerges. On the morning of the Flame Worm mission, Dick remains within the Shut Association, quietly sipping as Verlaine proceeds her roles. Verlaine spots his especially cautious readiness and observes him carefully. She remembers how his mana frail quicker than anticipated the prior evening, creating worry. Dick asks his regular beverage and arranges a knowing following single while. Verlaine thinks that his focus is above, not alert on the lost charm. Verlaine stays near to Dick, expressing silent faith as staying alert to his state. At the Belfrin Woods, a team waits beside a pool, preparing for the flame dragon's arrival. A odd glow appears, attracting their focus as unease moves between them. Abrupt motion gives the silence, making the team to respond rapidly. The flame worm stands from the pool, opening its wings as strain mounts. The team recalls a planned fire on the dragon's patterns, preparing to use its limits as giving positions. The cause warrior rushes ahead, attracting the dragon's focus and starting the strategy. As the worm responds fiercely, the team grips roll, hoping for the proper time to move. A distant fighter fires an accurate arrow as the warrior maintains the worm occupied. The strike hits, breaking the dragon's breathing as the warrior pushes ahead to complete the attack. The team proceeds striking as the worm responds fiercely, making them to maintain force as dodging its moves. The worm accepts air, then plunges inside way with power, hitting towards the position. A note of strategy shows the weaknesses of fire, base strikes, and the use of burst arms. Applying awareness of its habits, the warrior responds and hits a powerful blow on the worm. The worm fades and drops itself. As the team readies to move jointly, the team targets the belly of the worm, continually hitting to weaken its guard. Their combined strikes start to employment, gradually driving the worm towards a arranged snare. Steady force maintains the worm, trying as distant help maintains firm focus. Assurance builds between the fighters as they see their edge. A critical blow hits great, making the worm to cry as the fight approaches its turning stage. The team maintains force as the trapped worm fights strongly, making them to remain alert and maintain combined strikes. Abrupt retaliation gives their line, driving single warrior inside threat. The blow hits, departing her injured as the price of a one error turns plain. Yui falls, trying to withstand the agony as different girl remains near. Concerned regarding her state, Dick Silver faces a worm close, seeing the threat as the beast readies to blow. He fires a unique arrow, but the strike fails. Deflected by the dragon's hardened frame, changing his method, he progresses and pulls the dragon's attention. Attempting to handling the condition, the worm responds fiercely, driving rubble scattering and hitting him with strong power. Yui stays frail as the worm nears, as her ally remains near her. A feline fighter stands regardless wound, holding her blade. Different friend supports her choice, readying a barrier to stop the dragon's fire and create an opportunity to flee. They remain jointly on the worm, holding their position as force mounts with each next time. The worm strikes anew, making them to withstand as their power starts to vanish. The fighter confronts the worm solo, shaken by dread as recollections appear. Abrupt understanding focuses her attention and she lifts her barrier. The worm releases a mighty breathing, racing throughout the position as she rushes ahead, lacking halting. Fire slam on her guard, making her frame inside as she tries to endure the force. The power knocks her way, departing her wounded, and still as the fight extends a dangerous stage, Raya rests wounded as her companions hurry to her aid, glad to notice her yet safe following the violent fight. She recovers awareness, expressing resolve regardless her state as the companions verify their security. Her injuries are checked, creating worry regarding the remaining results of the dragon's strike. Close. The worm rests bound, frail, and failing to shift beneath strong bindings. The result turns plain as the way applied to restrain the worm is disclosed. The battleground lands as the worm stays bound. As the fighters remain inside the damaged position departed back, she examines the broken barrier, seeing it hardly endured the dragon's immense energy. A weak glow emerges close, attracting her focus as item odd starts to shape. Awareness moves throughout her confront as recollections appear, linking the appearance to someone known. She crouches and extends forth, shaken by the chance that someone wandering could have reverted. Dick lies senseless on a sofa as Verlaine observes over him. She moves nearer, checking him cautiously as keeping a steady and assured manner. His knowledge gradually comes, but he stays shaken by the condition and failing to respond safely. Verlaine remains near, expressing odd warmth as he tries to recover handling of personally. Abrupt response gives the time departing, each of them shocked as strain covers the chamber. Dick and Verlaine remain separate, each settling from the uncomfortable time as strain remains among them. She examines his response carefully, attempting to grasp his ideas as keeping a calm face. He changes the subject, calling focus inside to latest incidents and dodging the prior condition. Their talk shifts to the fight, considering on how surprisingly things developed. The attention shifts ahead, as they consider what to do following with the restrained worm weeks afterward. Dick causes Mylarka along a silent road, preparing to display her items sudden. She wonders his purpose, but trails as he leads her towards an enclosed space forward. They reach at a field where the formerly dangerous flame worm is currently quietly kept. Rather of dread, little worm beasts appear, moving openly and expressing no malice. Mylarka relaxes, holding single of them as the strain eases inside silent ease. Mylarka interacts cheerfully with little dragons, as Dick observes from a space, watching her gentler atmosphere. She responds quickly when he gets nearer, expressing awkwardness and attempting to maintain her calm. Her atmosphere changes, and she moves off, departing him puzzled as the little beasts trail her. Elsewhere, Dick stays steady, silently managing a bigger worm lacking attracting focus. Within the association, various fighters collected as Dick Silver rested silently, watching from a space. A youthful girl showed evidence of the restrained flame worm, making the security of close locals. Talk trailed regarding the fight, remembering their novicehood and the hidden assist that guided them across threat. Resolve became as the girl gave events she owned as a payment. She then requested a knowing with Duke Sama to directly show her thanks. A resolved girl demanded on guidance beneath Duke Sama, noting her limits as asking training regardless her novicehood. Inside at the association, she showed great thanks, thinking her endurance was due to Duke Sama's lessons. The maid reacted quietly, indicating she showed her power earlier, knowing him a new session. The girl paused but took the counsel, seeing waiting was needed. With fresh determination, she arranged to become tougher, moving ahead towards her aim. A known appearance moved the association, attracting silent focus as Timisu noticed someone following an extended moment. Manarina seemed and disclosed she was summoned by Dick, startling Timisu with her abrupt coming. Uncertainty extended as Dick was shown forth, departing Timisu ignorant of his real name. Companions dismissed the idea, as Dick stayed uneasy, fearing his hidden might be revealed. Regardless the strain, Manarina took his role, viewing him informally as he attempted to remain calm. The team arranged for an active drawing with ideas to spend the morning jointly beneath Dick's plan. Within the association, people described beverages, forming an easy and lively mood about him. Focus turned as someone suggested at later duty linked to his secret name. Dick displayed uncertainty, trying to grasp the condition as companions observed quietly. Afterward, a playful time trailed as a teasing idea was created, soothing the prior strain. Jointly, they joined palms, silently noting the issue had ultimately been decided. Evening filled the city as the association bar remained active. Dick drank silently as watching companions. A lively girl ordered beer close shortly following. She shifted nearer and accepted a place near him. Her efforts seemed easy and free. Dick gave her quiet recognition. She reacted with comfort, expressing reduce in his appearance, backed the response. Talk regarding positions and rank gained focus. Dick thought quietly, seeing her skill. Talk turned towards and shelter on the church edge. Worries arose as the director's state declined, departing the kids restless. Facts grew, showing a mysterious sickness and rising whispers. A odd appearance linked to a state was noted. Doubt grew as the place turned plain. The shelter was seen as the probable cause. Dick came and observed the kids beyond earlier coming the structure. Within, he saw a silent person beside the shrine. Feeling item odd, Dick encountered the cleric within the chapel. She disclosed she had predicted his coming and silently revealed her name and powers. They rested jointly, considering on the history. Moment had passed, but comfort stayed among them. Yuma described her present condition quietly, indicating an alter inside self. Dick heard as discussing the orphanage's condition and her duties. Her face turned, showing worry. Dick felt item greater back her speech. Yuma bowed her face, trying to answer. Dick noticed the change in her conduct and asked her alter. Doubt trailed as she attempted to talk. Dick observed carefully, feeling item grave. She ultimately confessed missing the skill to apply her energy. Feeling showed as she disclosed her state. Understanding hit Dick as he linked her speech with the history. Yuma tried to move regardless as Dick reacted rapidly, halting her rash purpose. Yuma became unsteady, attempting to apply holy energy regardless her state. Dick rapidly stepped, stopping her from driving self more afterward. He moved beyond and thought on her history. Her difficulty stayed uncertain, but her conduct had not shifted. Following soothing her, they described a short, silent time. Dick weighed how hard her condition must be. Shortly, he departed with determination. A strategy grew as he chose to move for Yuma's benefit. Association people told the chapel regarding the silver water jug arbor and its code following pair weeks. A person called Grenadine Manifrose came with his child, requesting assist about her state. Yuma's family directly arrived, startling those nearby and raising the gravity of the condition. They described she abruptly fell, departing her in agony as the reason stayed mysterious. The association took the appeal and started preparing to examine and treat the sickness rapidly. Following session, the team realized that Yuma's state was grave and needed focus. Various allies collected, expressing worry as noting the odd type of her sickness. A strategy was proposed for Yuma to remain night-long with them at different places for nearer monitoring. He silently weighed the plan, believing them as choosing to stay inside from straight help. Regardless doubt, he decided to assist from the secret lacking, showing his link to the condition. They considered his habit to respond intensely to compliments, seeing a gentler aid under his regular conduct. The team thought on this quality, seeing it created him simpler to method and grasp. Weeks afterward, they came at a big estate, greeted by a disguised servant running the mansion. Within, the interior amazed them. Attracting silent amazement from the guests, the huge interior departed them, watching the size. Seeing it far surpassed much they understood. The servant arranged rooms on the upper level and questioned them to relax as meal was prepared. They talked informally, viewing him as a capable servant as calming inside the estate. He reacted uneasily, feeling the condition was easing outside his plans. The talk shifted grave as faith and motives were silently explained. A steady time trailed where belief and comfort softened the mood between them. Yuma felt item odd, seeing a weak appearance that sensed restless and required soothing. The mood appeared easier following her blessing, but signs of a secret intent yet remained inside the estate. He silently noticed the condition was not as easy as it seemed. Focus turned as in sudden appeal guided to an uncomfortable condition needing his help. They shifted to different chamber where he arranged to help regardless plain unease. She paused, describing her faith stopped near touch. Although she displayed certain faith in him, he led the companions off, forming room as telling events would be done safely. The condition became uncomfortable as she rested, departing him to continue cautiously. Resolve overcame doubt, and he alert completely on soothing her state across his efforts. Shortly, steady reverted as each relaxed calmly, as he maintained space and ensured her safety. She reacted to the care, feeling ease as the unease slowly eased from her frame. He observed silently as she showed faith in someone able of curing like him. Her ideas disclosed admiration for that person's care and wished to assist companions. Although unclear of her personal powers, she kept trying to help people earnestly. With the care finished, her state better, departing her frame easier, and her heart calmed following ending the care. He departed the chamber as she relaxed, choosing to ready for the following step. As moving across the estate, he noticed no single else might be within except their team. Doubt became as he reached the stairs going to the loft. A silent appearance seemed over waiting solo in the dark room. He moved carefully, facing the mysterious person and asking their appearance. He confronted a mysterious girl stating linked to the mansion's first owner household. Beatrice Storn, a past aristocrat, emerges inside a silent estate. As Dick thinks on buying the strange estate, knowledge of each incident within the estate is disclosed. Making worry as Dick wonders her awareness, doubt stands when motion is rejected, regardless questions regarding secret appearance. Presence is described as item extend across the estate nearby in each room. Her meaning is displayed as an entity tied to watch and protect the estate. Beatrice proceeds performing her role, remaining loyal to the estate regardless her family's departure, as Dick responds in shock. Awareness develops as Dick understands she is a ghost tied to the estate, silently keeping its appearance. Worry emerges, but her presence continues, failing to vanish as her meaning stays incomplete. Wish remains as she wishes to remain, hoping for her family's potential arrival. Above, her appearance is yet sensed, quietly guarding over those within the estate. Talk regarding the mansion's shadowy history disturbs the team, as Beatrice's appearance stays silently recognized. Suspicion and strain appear as Dick rejects overstatement, meeting doubt from the companions. Worry moves when Yuma feels item odd. Although no plain threat is proven, her state is described as personal stress, indicating secret emotions shaping her condition. Focus changes to Dick as uncertainty builds over potential strain aimed towards him. Yuma builds uneasy, refusing the idea of driving the ghost off as her emotions turn unsteady. Realizing of spirit emotions is raised, easing the talk towards compassion rather than dread. Account regarding leading spirits settles the condition. Although Yuma's state proceeds to decline, consent develops hesitantly, but strain stays clear between them. Abrupt appearance moves inside the estate, suggesting that item greater has begun to respond. The team rests in the tub, attempting to reduce prior strain as comforting each other. Teasing conduct starts, making mild awkwardness as private room is crossed. Vitality changes inside confusion when Yuma is abruptly seized, disrupting the steady mood. Teasing and teasing maintain, easing the atmosphere regardless remaining unease. Beyond, Dick remains solo as the team stays within. Their active appearance persisting inside the estate, Dick thinks on the mansion's history, feeling no malice from Beatrice as considering different secret reason. Shadowy shapes collect beyond, showing incoming danger that rapidly pulls his focus. Pressure mounts as he readies to move. But motion within breaks his attention. Yuma abruptly emerges, forming uncertainty and disrupting the strain transfer. Knees replaces pressure, but threat stays nearby outside the estate grounds. Dick army personally to move regardless the uncomfortable condition. Centering on the coming threat beyond, Nailene launches and strike, but the dark foes stay unharmed, departing the team at a weakness. Focus shifts to Yuma as companions depend on her skill to determination the rising danger. Shadowy spirits encircle her, moving in as Dick readies to intervene. A wave of energy fires, showing many wandering spirits collected inside the estate. Yuma starts cleansing the spirit easily, freeing their spirits lacking chanting as keeping a steady appearance. A mighty pulse moves outside, guiding the purified spirits off from the estate. Ease trails as she feels calm, seeing the move of leading spirits carries her meaning. A silent time develops, expressing the value of her position as Dick observes carefully. Attention changes anew as the team readies to shift, aware Beatrice yet remains above in the estate. Dick comes, flustered as Yuma and Aileen quickly shield bodies, the condition calming following the prior incident. Shortly following, Yuma changes and moves towards the loft where Beatrice silently expects their coming. Beneath a silent evening, a estate holds a knowing where various sisters and a disguised person collect with careful focus. Within, Beatrice Stolen emerges frail, showing her name as meeting them for the opening moment. Her odd gaze show an infernal type, creating doubt regarding secret links to band study. Attention shifts towards calling mana, a dangerous way able of calling mighty fiends. Beatrice verifies she is a Wraith Queen, summoned across mana formerly measured by Lord Stolen. The team examines Beatrice, seeing she shares the equal Wraith type as the prior spirit. She shows a restricting pact with the Stolen household, stopping her from fading regardless cleansing. Above, Yuma feels a risky impulse inside. Realizing why souls collect about her, account proceeds as the calling and pact departed Beatrice back, attracting Wraith Queens easily. At last, Beatrice decides to battle, as departing needs loss, Making a battle to guard the estate mana rises as Beatrice readies to battle, resolved to guard the estate level if it causes to her vanishing. The disguised person weighs different choice, asking whether an answer exists lacking making her to fade. He moves ahead quietly, drawing focus and offering a different strategy to determination the condition. Facts emerge that solely a fiend lord can break similar a pact, tied by firm laws and penalty. The companions respond with shock, seeing the answer could require the appearance of a fiend lord. A calm lady shows self as the fiend lord, startling the companions with her steady statement. Different states her position inside the fiend lord's army, giving a method to free Beatrice from the pact. Beatrice observes the team, asking the appearance of several notable people collected jointly. A strategy develops to steady Yuma's energy, letting souls and the mansion's mentor to remain calmly. Beatrice confronts the disguised person, feeling rising as she hears to the offer that might alter her future. Beatrice pauses, asking if she might just vanish, thinking her presence solely carries harm to people. Yuma softly extends forth, telling her that her spirit is not destined to fade and yet grips meaning. Their palms take nearer, considering Beatrice's extended isolation as hoping for the stolen household to arrival. Relief comes as Yuma holds her, soothing the solitude that had covered Beatrice for ages. Shaken, Beatrice gives way, silently confessing she has hardly displayed similar weakness earlier. Beatrice tries to maintain her shape, confessing her frame fades and could vanish with the next dawn. The disguised person states she needs routine vitality. Although gaining someone ready stays unclear, he weighs the condition cautiously, knowing that taking similar in proposal might cause to cleansing dangers. A glow idea emerges, easing the strained atmosphere as different potential answer is suggested. The team crowds about him, pressing him to give routine vitality, placing the last choice on his shoulders. The disguised person consents to assist, giving his routine vitality as Beatrice softly asks a little share. He moves off to ready, departing Beatrice hoping as the strategy silently shifts ahead. Afterward, he lies in his chamber, drawing determination earlier the last stay. Beatrice emerges earlier him, her shape shifting as she readies to take routine vitality. With silent resolve, she questions him to remove politeness as the time ultimately starts. Beatrice pauses, asking for a softer method as she tries to describe how she seeks the procedure done. The person weighs her appeal, seeing a straight way would accept too extended and need a distinct method. She thinks on her extended solitude, unclear but ready regardless, solely just knowing him cautiously. She calms him, choosing to accept his routine vitality gradually to reduce his worries. With silent determination, Beatrice readies self, prepared to start the careful transfer. Beatrice starts cautiously, contacting him to take a little share of routine vitality as watching his response. Slowly, she accepts more, seeing the share is inadequate to support her frail frame. Shortly, she moves nearer and proceeds smoothly, keeping the transfer across the evening as he bears the procedure. The following morning, he reverted to Verlaine's estate. The space had calmed, as souls no longer collected. Verlaine seemed earlier them, calm and dignified. She'd proven her resignation following ages of rule. Her position had been passed way, departing her free from role. The history returned, showing the 6 fiend aristocrats who formerly protected the fiend lord. He had decided to evade straight clash. Verlaine stopped, considering on that choice and its purpose. She described how their team applied strategy to survive, overcoming threat regardless their youth. He showed his purpose to evade forming similar a bond. Although the idea stayed unclear, the condition gained focus to Beatrice's rank. Suspicion arose regarding every earlier pact departing her later uncertain formally her present links finished. She requested confirmation, as Verlaine shone forth that Beatrice would then belong beneath his control. He refused commanding her, considering her intent and the personal burden she carried. With silent determination, Beatrice moved ahead and ordered to shape a pact with him. A ritual started as energy collected among them. The prior pact was revoked, and a fresh bond was announced. A mark grew, engraving the link inside her spirit. Her name shifted beneath the fresh pact. She took her position with calm, bowing as she recognized her fresh name. The bond rested, placing her beneath his control. Although its purpose stayed complex, unease remained, but each side shifted ahead, preferring to agree their fresh relationship. They moved beyond the estate, changing to their fresh positions. She noticed a mild alter in his state. He described the condition quietly, mentioning the transfer of his energy lacking worry. From a great view, their ideas drifted, and he reminded her to accept care of self. That evening, he relaxed. Thinking events was rested, although questions remained in his mind. Surprisingly, someone moved his chamber, coming silently as he reacted in shock. He woke to discover her near him, catching him off protect. Her appearance carried purpose, departing him shocked. Uncertainty filled him as she attributed the condition to his prior efforts. She pressed the matter more, insisting his conduct had punishment as he faltered to describe. Personally, she justified her efforts as needed, linking it to their bond and his state. With determination, she started transferring energy anew, performing her position as he stayed shaken. He reacted in surprise as her efforts turned more intense, departing him failing to remain steady. She kept regardless doubt, centering on transferring energy as trying to maintain handling. The procedure worsened, making unease as the vitality transfer became unsteady among them. He felt the excess energy structure, seeing the condition was becoming hard to manage. Shaken, she reached her limit, but the transfer persisted as each endured the stress. She confessed the energy excess, describing it had reverted to her and created imbalance. He asked the odd result. Her sensations intensified, detailing the effect as immense as attempting to firm self. She likened their conditions. Observing his fatigue as each faltered to rest from the transfers slowly, they rested, letting the strain to vanish as relaxed turn needed. Sleep accepted her opening, departing him awake, puzzled by the condition repeating formally anew. At the tavern, steady reverted as regular routine continued. Beatrice worked silently as a guest showed thanks for recovery. The girl thought on her history, feeling regret but ease, as he calmed her, lacking rendering it significant. He talked lightly, as she praised his power and skill to move lacking doubt. Her ideas disclosed greater emotions, shaped by ages of burden and reflection. She described her determination to assist companions. As he took it, noting the effort needed, he heard as she described her argue for moving ahead independently, no longer depending on the chapel. Following cautious considered, she chose on a fresh road, preferring to assist people in her personal method. She showed her idea with assurance, expressing a symbol of her fresh position as he approved. Beatrice reacted positively as he encouraged her strategy and gave help. The atmosphere lightened as they described an easy beverage, showing a little stay towards a fresh beginning. Trio friends raised glasses jointly, celebrating a silent victory following extended tries that morning. Trio shapes observe a distant village from a hillside, seeing an unnatural appearance surrounding it. They determine the space as a cause of restless spirits, outside control where intervention seldom happens. A choice is created as they ready to move, organizing bodies to remove the danger efficiently. Souls and beasts appear beside the metropolis, but the team rapidly falls and eliminates them. With the threat gone, they depart silently, departing back rising whispers of disguised saviors. Dick silently grips a beverage at evening, wondering why no single told him regarding latest incidents. Cody states the rising harm within the tavern, pressing Dick to move as a great warrior. Dick hears quietly, expressing little attention but departing open the chance of help. A hooded follower emerges earlier, Dick, receiving a silent order linked to item odd inside the location. Above, a resolved girl seeks assist, coming Dick's association known for taking every appeal. Dick sits in the tavern watching a girl close as informally sipping, observing her refined but uneasy appearance. The girl displays distress, burdened by latest incidents regardless possessing power that might have assisted her. Seeing this, Dick nears quietly, giving silent focus lacking showing his real motives. At the response, he orders the bartender to arrange item as keeping attention on the condition. Elsewhere, the girl stays conflicted, ignorant that Dick has previously taken attention in her circumstances. Dick readies a unique beverage, applying uncommon fruit, silently giving it to reduce the girl's strain. She tastes it, feeling a steady sensation extend across her frame, somewhat soothing her burden. Calm comes as she thinks on her prior conduct, regaining handling of her emotions. With fresh determination, she formally asks the guild's assist to stop a rising threat. Doubt trails as she tries to disclose the real foe back the crisis. Kirsch readies a written appeal as Dick quietly beverages close, watching lacking interfering. Names linked to the issue appear, attracting strain as the condition turns more grave. She formally presents self, expressing regret as showing her name and meaning. Kirsch states her role and motives plainly, no longer hiding back vague efforts. Session events, Dick stays calm, noting the matter as considering potential help. Cody calms Dick quietly, as Dick observes with mild amusement at the unfolding condition. The maid hears as Kirsch steadies self, prepared to talk regardless the dangers present. A plot is disclosed, including aristocrats seeking to remove a royal across outside support. Facts emerge regarding stolen letters following a messenger was attacked, exposing secret motives. Kirsch recounts her task to arrest them. As the facts back the incident starts to appear, Kirsch shows the letters, describing firm instructions surrounding them and the odd terms linked to their managing. Strain stands as she remembers the bandits, her face tightening as recollections weigh heavily. A brutal scene unfolds in her mind, expressing the merciless result that departed a great force on her. More facts show secret ideas inside the letter. Along with her dangerous choice to uncover the facts, the scheme turns plain, pointing to a combined shift including aristocrats and an incoming military power. Kirsch states the noble's motive, showing a strategy to secure energy across royal blood and compel legitimacy. Dick thinks silently, seeing that human schemes can be more risky than creatures. The maid hears carefully, realizing the gravity as watching Dick's response. Kirsch admits the size of the danger, aware it surpasses what she can handle, so Dick ultimately responds, choosing to accept duty, taking the appeal to guard the royal. The maid confidently assures Kirsch that the association intent completely determination her issue lacking fail. Kirsch expresses great thanks, giving much an arrival regardless her remaining unease. The maid responds quietly, valuing Kirsch's determination more than every payment she might proposal. Cody joins in, prepared to help Dick, expressing faith as they ready to move jointly. As ideas start forming, the size of the task turns plain, including dangers linked to the royal household. Dick ideas to maintain the task silent, dodging focus as preparing a cautious method. The maid weighs options, observing the foe has previously begun moving forward of them. Talk changes to a mighty person linked to disasters, whose influence stays unpredictable. Far off, a girl at an academy feels item odd, suggesting at her link to the unfolding incidents. Inside the institute library, Mylarka tries to attain a great shelf, expressing anger at her height. Dick spots her effort as selecting a book and observes her silently from close. Guiding various books, she nears him and assesses what he is holding. As he tries to engage more, she steadily rejects his method and maintains her space. Level so, Mylarka recognizes his sincerity. Although she stays careful and guarded about him, Dick weighs Mylarka suspicious as she informally handles a disguise and changes the step to him. At the table, she assigns him to fetch a particular book and offers mild partnership in arrival. Shortly following, she adds more asks, directing him to collect various books from close shelves. Afterwards, she displays appreciation as holding a book, appearing more easy near him. Moving jointly, Mylarka examines his face as Dick senses unclear beneath her look. Following departing the library, Dick and Mylarka shift towards a remote space, persisting their step jointly. Shortly, they ride a worm across the sky, with Mylarka expressing unease throughout the air. Dick controls the worm, applying a unique item, leading it smoothly as keeping their course stable. Throughout the ride, Mylarka maintains attention as changing to the condition near him. As they fly over the woods, each observe the road forward, seeing item odd in the space. 1. The road. A soldier spots odd armor between riders, considering incoming team. Shortly following, a mounted fighter progresses towards a vulnerable target in the open. From over, Mylarka responds rapidly as Dick readies to intervene as threat mounts below. Diving from the sky, they launch an abrupt strike, seeking to overpower the foe team swiftly. Luna rushes along a woods road, inhaling difficult. As heading towards a bright first, her footing fails, making her to lose as mounted troops reach and encircle the space. Dread firms her face when a sharp object nears, departing her, failing to shift. Abrupt power from over disrupts the time, attracting focus off from her as confusion starts. A big worm falls, easing threat towards the riders as Luna observes in surprise. Troops respond in uncertainty, seeing the abrupt appearance over them as strain stands. They spot a worm guiding riders and ready to strike, creating bows regardless unease. A steady person orders with an accurate gesture as a soldier pulls his blade, prepared to blow. A mighty method triggers, forming a shape in the sky as vitality covers the battleground. Arms and armor break separate mid-action, departing the troops defenseless and shaken. The troops realize the mana is outside their realizing, their assurance disrupting as dread arranges in. The worm falls with its riders, making the team inside escape as their line falls. A disguised person readies different action as making Luna stays protected back a barrier. Energy crowds among the worm and its rider, showing a critical shift. The worm releases a huge cry, immense the battleground and scattering the remaining troops. Battleground falls silent as troops collapse throughout the position, as Luna observes the result in surprise. The worm hits heavily, its appearance firm as a palm softly orders handling over the condition. Disguised shapes stay calm atop the worm, expressing steady determination following finishing the clash. With threat gone, the injured foes lie yet as the worm stands quietly back them. The disguised pair reflects silently, keeping a calm manner as the condition lands. Luna smiles with ease as coming the disguised person following surviving the fight. A team travels across a woods as they attempt to communicate with a tigerfolk child and a dragon. Like entity, the child understands and states they are people from Albein, showing injured troops close. She gestures towards the foe base, detailing dangers and compelled requests for supplies. Facts emerge of captives taken and applied as hostages as companions faltered to flee. Ease trails as the team offers security, and the child discovers relief in their defense. The team decides to face towards the Berbekian base, knowing that restrained victims could not have far moment departed. Riding a worm, they introduce bodies momentarily as the tigerfolk child shares her name and observes them depart. Earlier parting, she questions for assist for her elder and the disguised lady receives. Shortly, they method the guarded base at evening, watching its structure from over. Within, a soldier spots a rope appearing over the barrier, ignorant of the silent infiltration beginning. A disguised person quietly restrains a protect, demanding details regarding the restrained tigerfolk. Beneath force, the protect shows the prisoners are collected within a tent inside the base. Quietly, the intruder ensures the person intent forget and stay asleep later. The protect falls, departing the infiltrator moving openly along the camp's edge. Cautiously, he slips inside the tent as different protect stays ignorant close. Within the tent, tied beastmen remain as a soldier asserts handling and announces their future. Strain stands when single captive fights, attracting the soldier's anger. Lacking doubt, the soldier applies a whip to enforce obedience. A tigerfolk girl braces self as penalty starts, expressing dread but endurance. Abruptly, the disguised intruder strikes the soldier way, startling all and stopping the abuse. The disguised person shows he arrived following session events, telling the captives he intends to rescue them. He warns them to remain inside, preparing to create a road forth regardless the threat. Attracting his sword, he crowds energy, centering quietly as the companions observe. With a one blow, the barrier shatters beneath immense power. Fragments scatter aside, opening the method as the captives remain in stunned quiet back him. The captives start escaping towards the woods as the disguised person remains back to handle the remaining danger. Shortly, armed troops encircle him, attempting to stop his road and interest his name. Quietly, he lifts a finger, caution them as drawing energy. A erupted of power erupts, immense the troops and making them inside immediately. Over the battleground, a worm falls beneath the moon, showing the following phase of the attack. A huge magic falls upon the stronghold, covering the base in measured damage from over troops' panic, as structures start collapsing beneath the immense power. The disguised person observes quietly as the base is reduced, lacking harming the captives. With the foe withdrawing, his friend orders retreat, finishing the mission. Afterward that evening, the scene changes calmly to the tigerfolk village beneath the stars. At the village, the team is greeted warmly as the rescued tigerfolk celebrate their secure arrival. Afterward, the disguised person stays alert, considering on remaining dangers and the reason to depart shortly. Feeling remaining mana, he shifts inside the woods, following signs with rising worry. Coming a secret space, he spots item odd outside a bamboo barrier. Above, the tigerfolk girl rests, ultimately gaining relief following the ordeal. From a space, the disguised person hears silently as the girl expresses faith towards each him and her ally. As bathing, the sisters talk warmly regarding him, remembering his power and care close. Different observes quietly, noting his qualities with a steady face. They discuss visiting anew, expressing rising bonds and relief following the rescue. Unnoticed, the disguised person departs, as the sisters stay ignorant of his silent departure. In the tub, the sisters realize the disguised person had been close and departed lacking saying much. They talk playfully regarding him, their ideas showing rising warmth and faith beneath the evening sky. They reflect quietly, taking their emotions lacking clash. Above, the disguised person rests awake, remembering his efforts from prior. He takes his disguise, asking personally silently as attempting to relax following events. Beneath moonlight, a disguised lady stands observe, thinking regarding companions and distant allies. Irene stands on a roof in Alvenes, guarding the metropolis and centering on a close house. Appearance catches her focus, making short shock. Earlier she lands and observes cautiously. She inspects the structure, records guards and aristocrats, then enters silently across the window. Within, she examines the condition and weighs her target between those nearby. Listening from beyond, she verifies the strategy and readies to move lacking doubt. Irene smiles faintly, choosing to move as holding inside her power. She abruptly enters across the window, showing self earlier the aristocrats lacking doubt. The men respond in uncertainty and dread, upward from their seats as panic moves throughout the chamber. Earlier they can answer, she closes the space and stops single of them with rapid motion. Confusion gives forth as the men attempt to flee, as Irene progresses, commanding the condition. Irene strikes swiftly, knocking away the aristocrats with accurate moves, finishing the battle almost immediately. The noise pulls focus as guards hurry in, solely to discover the men previously beaten and Irene waiting steady. Abrupt strike nears from back, making her to remain alert as threat closes in. She blocks incoming daggers with reduce, keeping handling as different fighter rushes ahead. Earlier he can blow. Irene responds, flipping the fighter and overpowering him with critical power. Swords hurry towards Irene, but she responds immediately, intercepting the strike as keeping her balance. She spots the harm to her outfit, pausing momentarily as irritation replaces her prior restraint. And fighter rushes anew, swinging his blade with power as he tries to overwhelm her. Irene evades and responds smoothly, hitting with precision as keeping full handling of the battle. Her attention focuses, unleashing greater power as she decisively shifts the fight in her favor. Irene proceeds her attack, hitting swiftly and disrupting across the attacker's guard with immense power. The injured person tries to answer, seeing her power far surpasses plans as Dread accepts grip. Lacking slowing, she releases rapid blows, driving him inside and stopping every opportunity to rest. The last blow hits difficult, driving him slamming away as the battle finishes decisively. With the chamber secured, Irene stands quietly, declaring justice as keeping handling of the condition. With the foes beaten, Irene surveys the chamber, verifying no more opposition stays. She wonders single survivor, pressing for details regarding their ideas and motives. Following discovering of an incoming strike, she subdues him anew to ensure compliance. Considering the condition, she decides the danger must be stopped earlier. It moves more. At the window, Irene readies to relay the details. Keeping attention on the following shift, Irene comes at a window and summons forth, entering to encounter Cody within the chamber. Cody shifts towards her, seeing the meet and preparing to listen cautiously. She states the condition as Cody finishes getting prepared, paying near focus. Facts regarding her state and readiness are disclosed as the talk proceeds. Cody finishes dressing, expressing readiness as Irene remains, alert on what arrives following. At evening, a lady stands by the window, considering on a time that formerly shocked her strongly. Bandages shield her torso as she receives the stress as guidance, thinking the choice was entirely hers. Elsewhere, pair allies take the hero stays ignorant since he trusts her entirely. Afterward, a friend adjusts her attire, feeling how hard it is to hide real emotions. By morning, she changes quietly, insisting she is fine as silently living with the lie beneath the evening sky. She lifts her palm towards the moon and quietly decides to devote self entirely to him from this time ahead. Afterward, she confides in an ally regarding her emotions. Beyond, he questions regarding a message destined for her, ignorant of the secret emotions surrounding him. Shortly following, they descend inside a hidden below passage under a shut tavern. Inside the secret chamber, they discuss uncommon mana crystals as concealing greater motives. In fight, she hit him with shadowy mana, remembering it as the opening moment she had ever shed blood afterward. Inside a mana ring, she asked why he hardly attempted to kill her in the history. He answered that destroying each fiend would solely maintain the war following cautious monitoring. Recollections reverted of him pressing waiting and readiness rather, of striking the fiend lord immediately. Considering on this, she noticed his wisdom but wondered why he yet overlooked the facts regarding her. Inside the rock chamber, she affirms they are solely near friends and wishes to maintain things that method. Moments afterward, he stands within a mana ring as preparations for teleportation to the border conclude. Glow engulfs him as she silently offers her help. Earlier the magic triggers. Energy rises above, but he stays steady as the transfer completes. Following arriving, he informs the warrior commander that the association mentor summoned him. An elder shows corruption between the guards and questions him to collect association people to arrest those present. In reply, he hides his confront with a feathered disguise and announces personally the disguised rescuer. At the border gate, troops stop his road and interest permission earlier, letting him to continue. Abruptly, he vanishes from their sight and reappears atop the barrier, departing the guards puzzled. Outside the stronghold, a huge foe forces stands assembled, showing incoming fight. From the west distance, flags rise as a huge Berbekian forces emerges. Waiting atop the tower, the disguised person instructions the troops to grip their position regardless their dread. As certain interests escape, he records there are no bribed traitors between these troops and focuses on the coming danger. Creating his palm, he triggers mana and announces he intent dispatch the invaders inside. A radiant sword develops in his grasp as he readies to confront the forces solo. In the history, she trusted no single and lived coldly, rejecting level to believe in the person who afterwards shifted her heart. Over moment, his firm appearance allowed her to open self regardless unclear circumstances. currently waiting over the city. She swears upon Cordelia's name and summons forth the ghost of her sword. Glow crowds in her palm, earlier bursting outside, as she fires a mighty blow. Outside the grounds, the approaching Berbekian forces confronts the stronghold as her strike falls towards them. Between the approaching troops, abrupt blow tears across their banner, startling the front lines lacking caution. Officers attempt to steady the troops, stating the distant strike was random and harmless. Moments afterward, different accurate blow slices across a commander's helmet, exposing their weakness. A mighty explosion trails, destroying close siege structures and shaking the line. Dread moves rapidly, and the order is offered for the entire Berbekian forces to escape from the stronghold. From the stronghold barrier, troops observe the Berbekian forces withdraw throughout the plains, puzzled by the abrupt escape. Over them, the disguised fighter stands atop the tower and warns that he intend not constantly be there to save them. Following he disappears, the guards doubt what truly happened, failing to notice plainly sense of the sun. Above, he tells personally that vigilance must maintain and that he must guide them safely. Ultimately, he departs the battlement silently, his role finished for currently. Great over the city, she flies near him, glancing inside as he lifts his palm towards her withdrawing person. Afterward, she confronts ahead with steady determination, preferring to devote self completely to him outside friendship. Dick flies over the metropolis on a worm, silently watching the city as they descend towards the association. Abruptly, a little fairy bird emerges and hits on Charlotte's palm, catching their focus, understanding trails when she remembers. It was a royal payment following beating the fiend lord. Afterward, Charlotte demonstrates her study by quietly communicating with close beasts. Grave news comes regarding our aristocrat easing fault for rebellion, forming dread of execution. Charlotte shifts to capture the fleeing aristocrat heading towards the royal metropolis. As Dick observes from over the city, suspicion emerges on Dick's confront as he weighs intervening regardless his preference for staying uninvolved. Using a disguise, Charlotte summons for Zevias and his companions to confront punishment. Dick waits his name as well, resolved to stay forgotten. Above, armed army accuse Jean of treason, placing the Weinberg household in threat. Kirsch crouches in bindings earlier Zevias, guarded by armed men within the mansion hall. Zevias offers false mercy, demanding devotion as punishing a follower to assert handling. Chilly determination covers him as he announces there is no location for traitors beneath his leadership. Moving nearer, he examines Kirsch with unsettling attention. Weighing her value, cruel purpose surfaces as Zevias decides to maintain her safe, intending to claim her as his fighter. Zevias rejects wrongdoing as Kirsch stays tied earlier him, blood showing her quiet resolve firms inside her, as she decides to remain steady regardless of the result. Moments afterward, Zevias lifts his sword and announces her execution in the name of household honor. Surprisingly, the sword builds too strong to lift, departing him shaken and puzzled. A disguised person intervenes, asserting that penalty belongs to the real wrongdoer rather. The disguised association mentor moves earlier Kirsch, facing Zevias as the tied prisoner crouches back him. With a one magic, he crushes the troops' power, departing them fell and failing to resist. A capable swordsman hurries ahead to defend Zevias, making a straight fight. Steel clashes as the fighter lunges at full speed, solely to be stopped easily. Quietly assessing his opponent, the association mentor pulls his ghost sword and readies to finish the battle. The swordsman clashes with the disguised association mentor, but his iron sword fails on immense power, attempting an upward blow. He rushes anew with urgency. In a rapid response, the association mentor throws him slamming inside a barrier, finishing the fight immediately. Watching carefully, he suspects the arms applied are supplied by Berbekia, showing greater help. As the injured troops writhe in agony, the association mentor quietly questions who intent trial him following. Zevias swings desperately, requesting flee, but the disguised association mentor blocks him, lacking effort. Rejecting to yield, Zevias strikes anew, certain he cannot lose to someone junior. Steady certainty answers him as the association mentor announces the difficulty previously finished. A measured magic triggers under them, trapping Zevias inside a destructive mana ring. Shaken and trembling, Zevias falls. Fearing he confronts item outside human energy, Zevias rests beaten as the disguised association mentor dismisses his talk of pride and rejects his insults. Surveying the courtyard, the association mentor states that solely a capable warrior resisted his weakening magic and instructions yield. He crouches near Kirsch and applies curing mana to mend her injuries. As she improves, different captive tries excuses, but the association mentor strikes him way lacking doubt. Quiet trails as he questions if every other traitor stay between them. Freed troops apologize to Kirsch, confessing their dread and uncertainty beneath Zevias' rule. Kirsch states she hardly planned to yield, preferring dying over following a dishonest mentor. Turning to the disguised association mentor, She questions why he stored them regardless the risk. Silent thanks covers her face as she expects his argue. Lacking showing his name, he conditions he merely acted on principle, then departs as they question for his name. Kirsch thanks the disguised association mentor, calling him a forgotten hero as her men remain back her. Realizing moves between the troops as they realize she requested assist from the secret rescuer known as the Forgotten Fifth. Afterward, Charlotte reinforces the deception, offering the disguised protectors as unrelated to their association as Xevious is taken off above. Different disguised lady observes from afar. Single week following halting Marquis Vensberg's plot, Dick visited the revived estate with his allies to stop last matters quietly. Inside the hall, he organized an official drawing, offering the estate's recovery as keeping firm oversight of the incident. His allies noticed the banquet as acknowledgement of their described efforts in resolving the household's crisis. Official reports credited Dick's critical cleansing for stabilizing Kirsch and rebuilding faith. Afterward, they observed his growth, observing his preference for plan over straight combat. Yuma disclosed her wish to ready a holy location to appease spirits, silently confessing she had been restraining greater emotions. Watching her satisfaction with cleric roles, Dick felt unknown fierceness back her steady face. She remembered cleansing the estate in single evening, remembering the mighty sensation she experienced. Resolved, Yuma announced she would remain near Dick through his former age. Seeing her devotion, Dick concluded marriage must arrive opening, startling all close. The drawing kept as the guests rested, and the servant redirected the talk as preparing refreshments for all nearby. Focus turned towards Cody as the team encouraged him to choose his regular beverage as watching his reserved manner. Following short consideration, he chose to have the equal beer as earlier. Elsewhere, Dick told the servant to ready a proper mixture, especially for Cody. Shortly the meal started, featuring dishes directly cooked by Dick prior that morning. Throughout the meal, Beatrice praised Dick's meals and energy handling. Cody concerned that if Dick indulged her too far, companions might difficulty to maintain pace with his rising focus. Different ally confessed mild jealousy, watching Dick's lack of knowledge towards the effect he had on them. Throughout the table, a lady likened him to an angler who entices but denies gains. Ultimately, Yuma silently questioned for more of Dick's focus, preparing to share her ideas. Throughout the banquet, Dick kept behaving as the disguised servant as formally going the toast. Pressed by the companions, he hesitantly consented to beverage alongside them. Glasses rose jointly, showing different described celebration. Afterward, beneath the evening sky, a lady silently moved his bedroom, aware he would arrival delayed. She approached the bed, prepared to carry forth her secret strategy. Solo in his chamber, the elf lay throughout Dick's bed, knowing the secluded drawing might finish by morning but failing to resist staying there. Inhaling in the cushion's smell, she likened it to daylight and cleanliness. Considering on his firm cleanliness and tireless patterns, she remembered how he cooked, cleaned, and cared for events earlier anyone else, guarding him cause-level powerful allies. She noticed he was no ordinary person regardless her extended routine. Holding the pillow tightly, she took that level, confessing love would hardly create Dick believe her. Solo in his chamber, the elf clutched his pillow, staring at the evening sky and confessing that hoping by self-sense lonely. She remembered departing the Fiend Royal to encounter Dick, level thinking regarding showing her past Fiend Lord self anew. Lately, she had just remained home, driving him off with a silent grin each morning. Holding the pillow tighter, she feared her emotions would solely become tougher. Surprisingly, Dick reverted and apologized for next home delayed, startling her. Shocked by his abrupt arrival, the elf compelled Dick forth of the chamber, holding his pillow and insisting she solely required a time solo. Departed beyond, Dick paused, remembering his promise to create up for next home delayed. Within, she faltered with conflicting positions, aware he did not grasp her emotions or her past name. Dick apologized earnestly, noting each her history as Fiend Lord and her devotion as his maid. Composing self, she softly questioned for a moment to alter. Dick readies for departure as a blonde lady silently hopes for his secure arrival. Feeling threat forward, she observes him move off, believing he intent arrive inside regardless the hidden burden awaiting him. A harsh vision surfaces, pressing dying if corruption consumes him. Departing dread in his gaze, abruptly, he wakes from the dream. Breathing uneven. Steady comes when he understands it was solely a dream, calmed by her appearance close. Dick sits at the tavern response as the maid greets him and readies to accept his order. Assured lady questions for his recommendation, assuming it intent be alcohol. The maid quietly tells her regarding the establishment's laws, keeping order within. Celine Laura presents self, showing her troubled history and position as association mentor. Strain softens as they maintain speaking, although Dick stays somewhat puzzled by the condition. Celine moves near to Dick at the response, ignoring the maid's silent disapproval as teasing him openly. The maid restrains her irritation and maintains calm, choosing to tolerate the conduct for currently. Celine changes the subject, asking whether Dick reverted to borrow money anew. Although she assertions business motives, he states his patrol about the royal metropolis and warns regarding beastmen appearing beside villages. Celine tells him that details needs reward, expecting compensation earlier, showing more facts. Dick confidently receives a contest within the tavern, verifying the conditions with a steady face. Single lady emerges in a showing outfit, teasing him as suggesting its secret motives back the trial. Different lady observes carefully as strain stands, and Dick tries to stay calm. Each women consent to compete, shaking palms as he stands among them. Terms are set. Victory grants details as the loser hides tonight's beverages. Celine lifts the stakes by giving self as the wager. The maid accepts handling as judge and officially starts a best-of-5 dice match among Celine and Dick. Evening falls over the tavern as Dick readies for a best-of-5 dice contest, reviewing the easy laws with each woman. They disclose an added state. Each loss needs removing a piece of attire, turning the match inside a dangerous wager. Assurance covers the women as Dick pauses, seeing he underestimated their boldness. Regardless suspicion, he receives the conditions and commits to maintain. The judge moves the container and starts the opening roll. Dick selects level as Celine announces uneven, and the judge raises the container to disclose the outcome. Distracting strain stands when Celine spots his wandering look, but the choice stands dice roll throughout the table as Celine braces self for the result. Dick triggers enhanced vision, tracking each motion cautiously. Noticing the sum turn 4, he verifies level and wins the turn. Celine smiles confidently as the dice roll anew. Knowing Dick's look lacking doubt, each detect each other's motives, and strain thickens as the dice tumble throughout the table. Moisture crowds mid-air as Celine secretly alters the dice trajectory, applying subtle water mana. Dick spots the interference, centering quickly as the dice collide and shift course. Earlier the outcome lands, the judge intervenes, stopping the match to address the suspicious manipulation. The dice stop on single and 4, making 5, giving Celine the first turn. Dick wonders the outcome. As the judge quietly rejects favoritism and recognizes Celine's initial edge, Celine teases him regarding entity lenient, suggesting that momentum could shortly shift. Different roll trails, and she admits difficulty review his motives. As strain mounts, Dick shifts towards Celine, preparing to question item grave. Celine suffers different loss, departing her almost fourth of attire, but she laughs and treats her misfortune as piece of the thrill regardless warnings. She refuses to quit and boldly takes different piece, insisting the game has solely begun. The judge permits it beneath discretion, and each woman maintain undressing as keeping competitive attention. Dick observes, asking how the match escalated outside its first meaning. In the finish, he negotiates to shield Celine's losses and transfer for the promised details. Following the match, the maid insists on managing the result as Dick suggests resting, but Celine refuses to depart, the condition incomplete. Each woman abruptly lean near towards Dick, making him to panic as the strain changes surprisingly. Uncertainty moves as they doubt what he noticed. As he tries to answer plainly, he admits applying enhanced vision, seeing he noticed events throughout the match. Celine receives the result, deciding the consent regardless her finished loss. Cautiously, Celine places a worn piece of leather earlier Dick, stating it was the argue she requested him forth. Prior, she recovered it following an enchanted battle beside the metropolis, compelled a beast to escape, departing solely that fragment back. Checking the fabric, Dick recognizes it as magical equipment made to hide its creator's name. Elsewhere, the maid observes as he decides to assign the association to examine regardless unclear causes. Satisfied, Celine entrusts the matter to him, confessing she might find nothing more on her personal. Celine insists she earned her payment fairly, but by the moment she reached the association, misfortune had previously stripped her of events various weeks afterward. The tavern comes to usual, with Dick seated at the response beneath the maid's silent supervision. A visitor nears him with easy worry, seeing his easy atmosphere. Throughout their talk, Dick shows he ideas to accept Sunday off rather of working. Attention sparks among them as the idea of spending that free morning jointly remains in the sky. Dick and his ally cheerfully clink their mugs, agreeing to spend his morning off jointly, lacking restraint. From back the response, the maid cautions them to evade misunderstandings as keeping her calm face. Abruptly, a stern person enters and requests to understand whether the leader is nearby. He gives a caution regarding the ice cave, promising punishment for every association member who meddles. Remaining steady, the maid invites him to remain, rejecting to agree intimidation within the tavern. The hooded person accepts a place at the response, stating he intend trail tavern laws as insisting his goal stays unchanged. Dick observes cautiously as the stranger receives a beverage, feeling he is dodging straight answers. Steady counsel is gave, indicating he describe his meaning rather of hiding back quiet. Focus changes to the ice cave, showing that his meat worries matters there. Ultimately, he announces his affiliation and admits his task is private, not merely professional. The hooded adventurer rejects partnership, insisting the pursuit is private and denying every link to the blue Sagittarius. Dick challenges his stance, reminding him that association people stay accountable to their organization. Strain moves throughout the response as the maid silently observes their dispute. Quietly, she wonders whether the targeted beast grips unique purpose for him. Lacking answering straightforwardly, the person departs reward back and exits inside the evening. Dick hears in quiet, indicating he previously gained useful knowledge from the hooded adventurer's meet. Details shows the person is a past Blue Sagittarius member, as the quest sponsor emerges suspicious. A mild grin develops on Dick's confront, showing a meaningful discovery. He recognizes the encounter's use and respects the adventurer's power. Beneath the moonlight, the hooded person readies cautiously for the risky pursuit forward. At evening, Dick stood beside the association structure, silently sipping as watching the steady exterior. Within the tavern, he rested between association people as a lively lady enjoyed her cocktail near him. Leza, the guild's intelligent informant, stayed near, appearing pleased with the focus about their table. Back the response, an elf maid monitored the condition. Wary of potential harm, as moment passed, Leza leaned nearer, requesting favor as Dick maintained his calm manner. Dick heard as Leza described firm animal laws in the royal metropolis, hiding that he previously understood more than he displayed. She described inspections needed for exotic beasts, including dragons and uncommon birds. Earlier support inside the city. Aristocrats drove interest, rendering uncommon beasts highly lucrative regardless rules and strong costs. Whispers accused Garamdor firm of secretly selling and hidden beasts summoned the ice fox. Dick noticed the beast resembled a beastman, suggesting it grave punishment. He reviewed the quest notice regarding the escaped beast as evidence linked Garamdor and interference from different association mentor. Following verifying the details aligned, he chose his following stay and departed the shut shop silently. Beneath the moonlight, he waited solo beside a structure, preparing for a secluded knowing. Sakuya Uzuki came and knelt earlier him, pledging her service, lacking doubt. Dick told her to examine a particular place, haul his strategy inside motion. Then Dick gave Sakuya a bound document, instructing her to maintain the task hidden and collect solid evidence. She took lacking doubt, affirming her devotion regardless, discovering the case present a beastman. Glad by her determination, he dismissed her and reverted within. Great and considered. Afterward, Dick encountered Verlaine in the kitchen and proven the suspicious leather item. They concluded the ice fox was a beastman bound in animal shape across mana equipment. Dick weighed that if the ice fox were truly a beastman, someone near to sec probable prepared the mana equipment. Although opportunity stayed potential, doubt became towards a capable craftsman able of forming similar tools. Verlaine thought on the single who taught her mana engineering, feeling a troubling link. That evening, hooded shapes shifted silently across the streets, dodging focus. Their road guided to the Garamdor firm, verifying the following target of investigation. Sakuya felt a weak beastman appearance inside the estate grounds, verifying Dick's prior doubt regarding secret movement. She silently leapt over the outer barrier and slipped within, moving cautiously across the garden. Pair-protect beasts confronted her, but she used a mirage magic that immediately stopped them. Single beast resisted momentarily, snarling earlier collapsing beneath her mana. With the road secured, Sakuya progressed towards the structure, preparing to uncover the facts within the estate. Sakuya noticed pierced bindings beside a window and concluded different beastmen had stepped. She shifted carefully across the shadowy corridor, alert to weak sounds inside the empty chamber. Her ears twitched as she felt motion over, verifying someone stayed within. An armed person abruptly attacked, making her to stop his sword at near range. Seeing each other's power, each stopped momentarily, measuring motives earlier persisting the confrontation. The beastman announced he had discovered evidence of the captive's appearance and informed Sakuya to withdraw. Rage seized him, and he swore to kill all within the estate for their acts. Sakuya tried to argue with him, but he refused to leave his goal. He disclosed the firm sold beastmen as goods, and the single he requested was between them. Holding a ripped fabric, he admitted his lost child had also been confined there. Sakuya proven Garamdor sold exotic beasts and suspected they shifted captives rapidly to evade pursuit. Within bound beastfolk disclosed the harsh truth of entity traded as stock by dishonest merchants. The beastmen burned with vengeance, but Sakuya asked the security of killing all nearby. She steadily refused to let innocent lives be taken and suggested targeting the firm rather. To show them publicly, Sakuya demanded they collect solid evidence earlier behaving more. Sakuya concluded that if the firm traded exotic beasts, a transformed beastman might be hidden and sold as stock. The beastman confessed his child might arrive to usual at intent, needing mana equipment to hide her name. They consented. Similar equipment proved manipulation, and evidence must stay secret inside the estate. Following short quiet, he revealed personally Gustav Wolfgang took partnership and chose to trail Sakuya's strategy. Dick examines a map in his office, preparing written training for the party heading towards the ice cave. Worry stands regarding the blue Sagittarius and the chance that the expedition could encounter him, evaluating the ice fox danger. He weighs including the fiend girl regardless strain her appearance might create. Evening falls over the association structure as he departs, yet considering on the dangers. A delayed visitor comes and abrupt pressure shocks him. Dick comes following a hidden knock, apologizing for the delayed meet, and discovers the lady fresh from bathing welcoming him within. Awkwardness moves as she questions him to dry her locks with mana earlier putting proper clothes on. Teasing compliments regarding depending on him disturbs his calm as she causes him more within. He tries to handling his ideas, convincing personally nothing inappropriate intent happen. Abrupt motion exposes more than anticipated, departing him stunned and speechless. She adjusts her towel, teasing him as watching his response. History recollections appear, helping him maintain handling regardless the condition. Applying a mana-infused comb, Dick cautiously restores her broken locks. Firm moves repair the strands, and she displays silent appreciation. Employment finished, he offers a last adjustment as the atmosphere relaxes. Dick proceeds, assisting her, applying cautious method as attempting to remain alert regardless rising knowledge. He finishes the step as she records remaining stiffness, keeping his focus on practical matters. Abrupt understanding disrupts his calm, making him to pull inside and firm his ideas. Regaining handling, he states the Ice Fox task and potential threat, including sect talk changes towards halting Garamdor firm and protecting exploited beastmen. Dick verifies the firm intent be done safely, then redirects his attention towards Eileen. Uneasy strain stands as he tells her to dress, attempting to remain calm. She shifts rapidly, although the time stays uncomfortable and charged, and sudden shift catches him off protect, icing his response, turning off. He departs the sky strong with remaining strain. Aileen moves nearer and catches his trembling palm, her voice soft but determined, as his heartbeat pounds in uncertainty. With flushed cheeks, she attempts to confess long-held emotions, and his restraint starts to falter beneath the burden of feeling. Earlier, much progresses. Sakuya abruptly emerges, interrupting the charged quiet among them. Awkwardness floods the chamber as explanations stumble and strain snaps. Aileen hastily retreats to altar, departing Dick shaken as Sakuya finishes her throat meaningfully. Dick offers a odd neckband discovered at Garamdor firm. Thinking it could disclose how beastmen are measured, checking the item carefully, he verifies it matches different piece, boosting doubt regarding its meaning. Sakuya recognizes the discovery as a vital clue, reinforcing their following course of action. Shortly following, a team travels across a chilly woods, moving cautiously towards their destination. Aileen causes as Raya and companions trail, keeping alertness as the harsh environment tries their progress. Raya verifies the Tiger's village is her hometown, deepening her link to the task and boosting her determination. McKinley and Regal declare their resolve to show bodies, expressing assurance regardless the harsh terms. Eileen thinks momentarily on Dick's position as the team proceeds approaching across the frozen road. Chilly winds intensify, making clear stress as they beside the ice cave. Abrupt sounds in the woods halt their moves and wary faces extend between the team. Rhea hurries forward towards the ice cave, departing her teammates to trail as snow scatters under her moves. Inside the frozen opening, she encounters a hooded person and immediately recognizes him as Sect. Strain stands as Sect stands his position, dismissing association control as wounded shapes lie back him, making Raya to ready for confrontation. Dick confronted a resolved lady in the snowy woods, feeling her readiness as remaining careful. Shortly, each stood earlier an icy cave, focus easing towards its secret threat. Within, he warned her not to interfere, preferring to confront the danger solo. Later, he shifted off, refusing help and keeping his space. Ultimately, she gave assist throughout the snow, rendering him pause in shock. A mana neckband was disclosed as the reason stopping a beastman from returning to usual, prompting cautious reconsideration. Dick noticed the Ice Fox had worn similar a tool, verifying suspicions regarding beyond interference. Regret trailed as he confessed his prior determination was misguided, as she defended behaving for someone precious. Companions came in the woods, reporting progress and pressing more readiness. Consent grew rapidly, and they arranged to continue with a structured exploration of the cave. Eileen started the cave walkthrough, describing its source as a dungeon transformed by water souls. The team progressed throughout the opening level, watching frozen terrain. Abruptly, frost goblins descended from over, twisted by the cave's harsh environment but organized enough to coordinate strikes. Dick and Eileen answered swiftly, cutting across the charging beasts earlier their attack might extend. With help from their companions, the line gripped steady, proving the goblins manageable. Formerly their habits were realized. The party checked frozen slimes on the opening level, observing their odd traits and the dangers of careless managing. Upon reaching the upper level, glow snowfall drifted inside the cave, startling certain people. Dick felt the target was near and asked all to remain alert as strain rose. Forward, motion collected beside the tunnel exit, showing several shapes rather of a one appearance. Snow wolves appeared in line, surrounding the team as icy breathing filled the corridor with threat. Snow wolves howled in unison, showing devotion to a secret leader inside the cave. Shortly, the ice fox seemed over them, marked with a shining crest and radiating plain control. Dick warned the team regarding its icing breathing as giving positions to divide the foes. At the signal, the party progressed, attracting the wolves' focus as prepared. Combat erupted immediately. Swords and arrows clashing on rapid beasts as a fiery blow cut across the confusion. Ain dashed ahead, cutting across pair wolves at formerly as forming and first towards their leader. Dick anchored them with dark restricting, stopping their charge and restricting their motion throughout the snow. A fierce presence of energy rose across the cave as force built among each sides. The ice fox leapt from over, descending with power as Ain arranged to intercept. She released a crushing method midair, hitting downward as the cave shook from the force. A huge shockwave erupted throughout the cave as Dick braced personally on the opening power. When the dust cleared, Ain stood inside a crater, seeing her blow had failed to complete the foe. Elsewhere, the ice fox rose anew, covered by unnatural vitality that suggested it beyond interference. Dick shouted for attention as the empowered creature arranged different attack. The fox lunged across the blizzard, but Dick intercepted, guarding Anna's caution that the entire cave was icing over. Dick observed the unnatural snowfall and concluded a mighty boosting magic was supporting the ice fox. The empowered creature charged straight at them, tearing throughout the frozen position with immense power. Ain moved ahead and allowed ice to shape over her leg, anchoring self as she confronted the beast straightforwardly. In reply, the fox released spiraling gusts and summoned huge icicles that rained way towards her roll. Regardless the attack, she endured the barrage and arranged to respond as the creature roared in anger. A barrage of snow spears arrowed towards Ain, making her to protect as sharp ice hit relentlessly. Impacts covered her from each direction, but she endured, feeling warmth opening across her frame. Seeing Dick was supporting her with a magic, she steadied self and alert on the cause back the fox. As different volley grew above, she signaled Dick to depart the front line to her, turning towards the ice fox. She released her full power, declaring the fight currently level. Ain drove her foot inside the frozen position, declaring inwardly that no boosting magic would create her yield. Dick felt vast crimson energy drawing about her and noticed her stance disclosed a far greater name. Energy erupted as Eileen Sharperia appeared completely. A fox ghost shows its icy real shape as Dick observes. The lady moves ahead, seeing the creature's concealed power and preparing to confront it. Abruptly, the fox rushes throughout the frozen position. Ice bursts outside in a fierce explosion, covering the space in opening frost. Dick responds in alarm as the icing power worsens, but she stands steady. Drawing warmth, she releases a spiraling blast that melts the approaching ice entirely. The fox ghost lunges from over, claws extended, attempting to blow her from back as frost trails across the sky. Its jaws widen in a furious cry as she pivots quickly, driving a mighty kick above inside its frame. Momentum changes as she spins, sword flashing, and slices throughout the fox midair, making it inside. Injured and collapsing, the beast retreats, its shape shrinking as it hits the position. Waiting steady, she observes quietly as Dick observes. Snow lands over the battleground as the injured fox rests still. Dick and the lady detect the creature's presence easing strangely. Moments afterward, its frame transforms inside a senseless youthful girl curled on the chilly position. Inside at the association, Dick carries her within as sudden guests reach to assess the result. The newcomers realize Dick's real role and admit their prior misjudgment. They propose sincere apologies and thanks, promising to confront the firm accountable for the incident. Inside the association hall, officials doubt the assertions and appeal plain evidence about the suspicious care of beastmen. An elf lady quietly adjusts her glasses and starts outlining the guild's investigation results. She offers confiscated documents and an enchanted neckband, establishing the company's help in unlawful transactions. This Dick builds thoughtful, knowing of his links to the association and the case's gravity. The awakened girl speaks of her brother, and Dick receives that the facts can no longer stay concealed. The fox girl presents self as Midzuha, describing her mixed heritage and uncommon inherited traits. Earlier, the association people. She describes their remote mountain village and how her sister was banned to depart since of her risky skill. Concerned regarding misunderstandings, Midzuha questions regarding the blue Sagittarius as Dick hears cautiously. Beneath a full moon, she would change wildly. Resolved to uncover the facts, Dick announces he intends to examine the Blue Sagittarius Association mentor directly. Dick conditions steadily that those accountable intend confront legal punishment. He recognizes her help from the beginning, asking whether she intends to notice the matter across entirely. The elf states their initial investigation and receives duty about the Ice Fox's defense. She clarifies the association master's leading principle and the task they uphold. Dick announces his aim to create a location lacking discrimination and invites her to join them. Dick admits he cannot ignore the debt he senses and offers his palm, proposing the metropolis as a safer location for Midzuha and her sister. Midzuha gratefully receives, asking permission for each siblings to stay beneath the guild's defense. Dick offers housing and suggests short-term employment. Her brother presents personally as Sec Crucifer, sealing their fresh partnership with a steady handshake. With tensions softened, the association people silently reflect on the sudden but hopeful result. Within the association, Midzuha teases Dick as Sect and the elf observe. Afterward that evening, a mysterious lady observes the metropolis from a roof, harboring great warmth and risky motives towards Dick. Trio women covered Dick and started removing attire as he stood frozen in surprise. Uncertainty filled his mind as he wondered how the condition escalated so rapidly. Prior, all had collected at the association tavern, sharing beverages following an extended mourning. As evening worsened, an ally departed, entrusting Dick with duty, earlier moving the door. Afterward, troubling news regarding a restrained association member weighed heavily on him. Dick analyzed latest incidents, linking each guild to suspicious efforts that might disclose greater wrongdoing. The maid weighed the hierarchy, seeing mighty leaders probable understood more than they disclosed. Waiting separate, Dick recognized the threat, considering secret army manipulating incidents inside the metropolis. Resolve filled his look, expressing he had no intention of ignoring the matter any longer. Overlooking the city, he decided to uncover the facts regardless the dangers present. The maid respectfully apologized earlier, showing her history as a past fiend lord, catching Dick's focus. With firm determination, she asked him to turn the supreme leader of each association in the metropolis. Startled by the offer, Dick asked her reasoning, as insisting he preferred remaining unnoticed. Quietly, she argued that real power deserved awareness and that he might claim control to guard his ideals. Dick thought on his wish to create calm among races. The maid described that commanding portals and details previously set energy inside Dick's attain. She demanded he might seize the royal metropolis whenever he desired, offered his unmatched power. Considering her speech, Dick imagined ruling from the secret as the official king stayed a figurehead. A weak grin crossed his confront as he dismissed her overstatement but recognized her history control. Ultimately, he chose to maintain the present balance, keeping his real energy concealed for currently. The maid demanded that hiding similar power was wasteful and moved nearer with a soft face. Leaning towards Dick, she proposed the morning was destined for relax, guarding his response cautiously. Seated jointly, she reminded him of her role to serve as he paused, knowing companions were close. Pair women observed from the doorway, asking the condition and rising suspicious of their closeness. Awkwardness extended as charges flew, and Dick noticed the confusion had worsened more. Pair women disclosed they had been guarding from the secret and misread Dick's secluded talk. Single confronted him regarding neglecting her and the guild's later, pressing him for focus. Different teased his flustered response, laughing as he faltered to answer safely. As uncertainty became talk of assisting with a sobriety magic guided to more awkwardness. Blushing, she demanded he accept duty for her drunken condition, deepening the uncomfortable strain. The women kept undressing, stating alcohol justified their boldness as Dick stood shaken. Single questioned for assist removing her outfit. Ignoring his obvious panic, Different shifted nearer, teasingly comparing self as the condition became more chaotic. They started measuring and arguing over appearances, viewing the time like a competition. Covered and flustered, Dick asked how incidents spiraled so far outside handling. Dick paused, attempting to reassure them as the companions asked his efforts and the situation's direction. An uncomfortable quiet extended as the women exchanged watches. unsure how to continue more. Single rested earlier him, uneasily asking him to start, as strain filled the chamber. Flustered, Dick faltered to remain calm as she arranged self-regardless clear awkwardness. He cautiously used the magic, centering on helping her rest. Although the condition stayed strongly uncomfortable, exhausted, the lady relaxed as Dick proven the care was mostly finished. Companions reacted with awkwardness, seeing the condition had been misunderstood from the beginning. Concerned, Dick gave a tire, pressing her to evade getting sick following events. As strain softened, the team dispersed, each withdrawing awkwardly following the incident finished. Afterwards, solo in the tub, Dick thought on the chaotic evening, feeling especially tired regardless accomplishing little. Resting in the tub, Dick noticed odd ripples forming about him. Abruptly, motion under the water intensified, creating his protect as he feared a secret danger close. Rather, a known person appeared energetically, startling him and disrupting the strain entirely. Dick noticed the fox-eared girl method him in the tub, her soaked person near as uncertainty crossed his confront. Her flushed cheeks and unfocused gaze disclosed she had drunken too far, behaving especially carefree. Association people noticed she consumed powerful alcohol accidentally, making the condition attempting to stay off. Dick paused as she showed warmth for the association. She seized him steadily, insisting he agree her thanks earlier departing. In the tub, the fox-eared girl positioned self back Dick and started washing his inside, pressing near as he reacted with clear strain. She lifted his arms softly and scrubbed throughout his shoulders, watching his muscular frame with plain curiosity. Moving nearer, she reached about his torso to clean the front, as he attempted to firm his ideas. Her palms drifted lesser along his torso, more unsettling him. Shocked by her abrupt boldness, Dick shifted, seeing her thanks had crossed boundaries. Overheated and uneven, the fox-eared girl leaned too near to Dick. Their confronts, inches separate as strain, rose among them. Abruptly her power eased, dizziness immense her, making Dick to catch and firm her trembling frame. Seeing warmth and alcohol created it, he carried her forth, applied a magic. Afterward, he passed by pair association, people silently helping different girl dress, departing him uneasy. Guarding the odd scene unfold, Dick asked why events sensed strangely chaotic that morning. Dick learned that when Eileen transforms inside an oni, the ghost gradually erodes her spirit, needing cautious cleansing. He realized the threat of her reverting inside a destructive primordial shape if corrupted too strongly. Yuma's touch and cleansing skill revived Eileen to usual, soothing the stress on her frame. Entering the chamber, Dick apologized for interrupting and recognized the effort spent stabilizing her state. With comfort that Yuma would stay by her aid, Eileen promised to manage her energy responsibly. Dick awkwardly rejected, staring at Eileen, dismissing the time as harmless teasing as remaining strain stayed. Afterward, Mizuha alert on her tavern rolls, following dishes efficiently and earning firm compliments from regular customers. She politely greeted newcomers and led them to seats, keeping professionalism across her shift. An experienced lancer came and jokingly referred to her as Dick's child, startling them each. The person revealed personally as Leonid Balanche and quietly assured Dick that matters were rested. Shelley Hardis, mentor of the Red Gemini and a unique red mage, asked latest store laws as clarifying her link to Leonid. Seated jointly, she told Dick that she and Leonid arrived since he wished to discuss item vital. With a grave face, Dick questioned regarding latest asks submitted by the White Capricorns Association. Leonid disclosed those asks present suspicious activities resembling experiments, prompting worry from Shelley. Dick pressed more regarding the enchanted tools present. Shelley stated the ordered hypnosis tools were destined to manipulate conduct, an obvious breach of the capital's laws. Dick confessed he had investigated silently and discovered the Violet Scorpius had displayed attention in the commission. Leonid proven that Violet Scorpius probable took it and concealed White Capricorn's people inside their ranks. Determined, Shelley showed willingness to confront the danger regardless the dangers present. Dick apologized for reacting delayed, feeling the association balance had previously turned. Leonid weighed facing the White Capricorns but chose to hide their suspicions to prevent attracting focus. He then consented to meet the Red Gemini and quietly gave Dick a stored duplicate of the guild's appeal letter. Reviewing it disclosed a neckband destined to hypnotize people and beastmen for unlawful trafficking. Attention shifted to the White Capricorns, formerly respected protectors of order in the metropolis. Worry became as Dick asked what had shifted inside the association and the city itself. At the southern edge of the royal metropolis, the Gemini Guild's huge headquarters rose outside the active districts, displaying control greater than Dick's smaller association. Pierced grounds and scattered rubble revealed signs of a fierce intrusion. Under the evening sky, he learned 6 attackers compelled entry and answered opposition with wind magic. Following securing the survivor, Dick chose to handle the danger solo, Considering White Capricornus' help, he hurried towards the ruins, feeling rapid escalation. Throughout the evening, intruders stormed the association and swiftly beaten the guards on the opening level, viewing the guard as insignificant. Following subduing all, they remained within the hall, satisfied with their progress and careless regarding the injured people about them. Our restrained lady was bound as the attackers arranged to accept edge of her helpless state. Dick abruptly moved, disguised and calm, attracting immediate malice from single rash assailant. With accurate power, Dick hit him way, overturning the condition immediately. Fighter launched a flame magic within the hall, but Dick raised a protective barrier that bound the fire inside a confined prison. Earlier, the mage might respond. Dick activated a silencing method that suppressed more spellcasting and departed the person stunned. Describing the effect momentarily, he rendered the caster failing to apply mana. With rapid strikes, Dick knocked him away and announced his arrest later. He healed the wounded people and arranged to confront tougher foes upstairs. On the upper level, Dick pinned different assailant to the position as the remaining men panicked, shaken by his immense power. Within their charges, he quietly asked them regarding links to White Capricornus, dismissing their fear-driven insults. A captive warned that beating them would alter nothing on a far tougher individual. Approaching smoothly, Dick demanded plain answers, silencing their opposition. Their trembling confronts stirred recollections of a moment when all formerly feared him. Waiting inside the corridor, Dick reconsidered his assumptions regarding White Capricornus, seeing their efforts contradicted the honor anticipated of a top association. Noting his misjudgment, he decided to move according to his principles. Beyond beneath the evening sky pair association, people combined their guard, driving inside an approaching foe within the broken chamber. Single girl hit decisively, making the fighter to escape throughout the cracked level. Abruptly, the person released a rapid sword method. As the fierce slash rose ahead, Single girl yanked the other aside, hardly dodging a straight blow as the power shook the level. A reinforced barrier abruptly rose among them, and the fighter, blocking the method and showing Dick's appearance close. Unfazed, the foe laughed and released different racing blow, assured in his superior power. Watching quietly, Dick measured the man's energy as the sisters faltered to endure the force. Determining the danger too major, Dick arranged to stay indecisively. The blindfolded fighter announced his dominance, boasting of history killings as belittling Dick's waiting regardless his level. Guided by pride, he launched ahead with full power, vowing that this opponent would lose like the companions. In reply, Dick released the seal on his bound energy, letting his real power to wave outside. As the force filled the chamber, the sisters observed quietly as the past hero arranged to disclose his real skill. Dick disclosed that he constantly suppressed his physical, enchanted, and mental energy across a limiting magic that bound his real capacity. Turning towards the blindfolded fighter, he decided to free that burden and confront him at full power. Seeing the danger, the foe rushed ahead. The opening racing blow failed to overwhelm Dick, who gripped his position lacking doubt. Immediately later, the fighter released many intersecting slashes. Encircled by many intersecting slashes, Dick released an upward ghost sword that tore across the layered attack over him. Moving the space, he transitioned smoothly inside wind, infused strikes, deflecting the enemy's strike at beside point-blank range. Freed from his limiter, Dick processed each motion immediately as his opponent arranged a last destructive method. The blindfolded fighter released a raging tempest, filling the hall with fierce currents. Within the tempest, Dick stayed firm, expressing no trace of dread as he arranged a response. Inside the raging tempest, the blindfolded fighter mocked Dick, thinking his tempest would power doubt or escape. When the winds rested, Dick stood unharmed. His sword bowed as the foe noticed item had shifted. Quietly, Dick disclosed he had severed the energy paths sustaining the tempest. Surprise extended throughout the man's confront as he realized his method had been dismantled immediately. Noticing their opportunity, the sisters rushed ahead to blow as Dick observed in handling. As Dick bound the warrior's energy, single sister progressed with enhanced power and hit his blade aside. Seizing the first, the other wrapped her whip about him, restricting his moves earlier he might rest. Trapped and enraged, the blindfolded person shouted dangers, but Dick stayed yet as the sisters gripped line. With steady determination, Shelley moved ahead, denying him more speech and asserting handling. Applying her fragrance-based mana, she subdued him entirely as he was compelled inside submission. Subdued by Shelley's fragrance mana, the blindfolded fighter lay bound, failing to resist its commanding effect. Dick approached quietly and instructed his mana equipment surrendered, pressing him to disclose his goal. Following verifying no secret arms stayed, he softened the strain, and the sisters noticed their disguised rescuer as Dick. Ease overcame dread as he showed short regret for arriving delayed, Feeling item odd across enhanced sight, Dick silently revived his limiter, sealing his energy anew. With the fighter bound, the sisters steadied bodies as Dick asked them to listen cautiously, earlier reacting more. Checking the confiscated belt, they learned it was a handling tool linked to a appeal from White Capricornus. Beneath asking, the captive confessed the order arrived straightforwardly from his association mentor. Smirking, he disclosed he planned to abuse the women, applying the tool following subduing them. Disgusted by his speech, Shelley hid him away and tightened his restraints. With the foe bound, strain softened as the sisters steadied bodies. Dick applied curing mana to steady him, then told Lottie to check on the other association people. Throughout asking, the captive confessed different individual had strengthened him outside usual weaknesses. Shelley pressed more, requesting confirmation whether that person differed from the association mentor. Although the fighter refused to answer, the team concluded a secret person had granted him energy and influence. Considering the collar's function, Dick asked whether other association masters had previously injured beneath similar handling. The captive described that mighty association leaders applied similar devices to restrain and dominate those who defied them. From this, Dick and Shelley noticed one secret person might be manipulating several guilds across dread and obedience. Checking the confiscated equipment, Dick suspected the equal cause supplied these handling tools. Seeing the danger, they concluded someone aimed to infiltrate top guilds by exploiting influential fighters. Shelley thought on Dick's determination and weighed whether forming in support on the secret power was truly misguided. Shortly following, the Red Gemini consented to sever links with White Capricornus and cooperate with Silver Aquarius. The captive scoffed at their choice, dismissing the power of pair smaller guilds joining palms. Lacking doubt, Shelley hit him anew, finishing his insults. As quiet reverted, she confessed her rash action and took duty for missing handling. Following the clash, Shelley observed Dick cautiously and noted how seldom he present personally straightforwardly in association matters. He confessed her assessment was accurate and described he preferred operating silently back a disguise. Curious, Shelley moved nearer and softly reached for the disguise covering his confront. With firm palms, she removed it, showing his known face under. Smiling softly, she took each sides of him, glad that the dependable friend and carefree person were the equal person. Shelley attempted on Dick's disguise, silently testing how it sensed to wear. Dick stands beside damaged grounds, remembering a mysterious person able of convincing an SSS-rank fighter to cooperate, someone possessing immense skill and influence. Ideas shift towards past comrades from the Fiend Lord Punitive Power. His mind lands on Verlaine and the mentor who formerly taught him mana. Numerous ages have passed since their last knowing, as she proceeds traveling openly. In the finish, he concludes solely that teacher might craft similar mighty mana tools and boosting magic. Legends describe the Grey Jester as a person whose efforts inspire either compliments for heroic feats or dread for ruthless deeds throughout numerous hits. Inside the broken space, Dick decides to examine the condition personally rather than depend on unclear conclusions. He verifies the security of the Black Leo and the Red Gemini. Discovering losses stay limited. Reports verify match groups previously shift on the White Capricornus. Moving forward, Dick receives duty, prepared to confront the danger straightforwardly. Concerned regarding rash action, Dick instructions Lees to join Sakuya and secure civilians. Regardless questions, he states that preserving his silent routine needs establishing steady terms by resolving this crisis lacking doubt. Ease displays on Lees's confront as she receives his determination and trusts his judgment. Jointly they move ahead, noting that rapid action and partnership from allied guilds intent be needed. On the following evening at 5th Avenue, moves start including the Violet Scorpio. A suspicious structure hidden as a residence pulls focus as a disguised fighter called Glow Sword Army entry across the door. Within, she swiftly restrains a person earlier he can respond, stopping opposition and asserting handling over the condition. Watching his blade, she spots signs indicating poison on the sword. Seeing the violation of royal law, she firms her grip and readies to detain him. Abruptly, different armed person hurries in from the inside. Glow Sword fires a abrupt flash, blinding pair attackers and halting their move immediately. Lacking doubt, she hardens her sword method. Securing handling of the hallway, the intruders collapse onto the level, senseless and failing to maintain fighting. Moving ahead, she shatters a secret barrier, uncovering a hidden route outside the pierced bricks. Below the stairs, several armed opponents await her coming, making the task inside a greater confrontation. Glow Sword steadies her sword, preparing for the ambush hoping outside the corridor. An assassin lunges, lacking doubt, hitting with lethal purpose as different supports from a space. Activating an automatic response method, She deflects the attack and comes an accurate blow in single motion. Steel echoes across the chamber as arms lose, showing the attacker's rapid loss. With foes subdued, she surveys the chamber, turning her focus towards the guild's greater corruption. Glow sword hits within the chamber as the door back her slams shut, sealing the roof room. She confronts a disguised opponent waiting throughout the tiles, each measuring each other in quiet. The foe rushes and strikes, but she blocks the blow as different fighter tries to flank her. Applying a illusion method, she departs back an afterimage and evades the incoming slash. Seeing the opponent as the Violet Scorpio's leader, she spots a commanding neckband making his efforts. Glow sword strikes decisively, knocking the measured leader senseless and finishing the roof fight. Following verifying the space is secure, she contacts Dick and reports that her step is finished. Elsewhere, movement changes to the Green Cancer Association at 8th Avenue. Within the hall, various shapes using collars are discovered, indicating external manipulations similar to prior encounters. Between numerous dolls and silent golems, the team understands the cause of handling rest greater inside the guild's secret operations. Following the fight, Yuma offers gentle relief, speaking regarding leading spirits calmly as expressing thanks for entity jointly with her ally. Aileen hears cautiously, but turns flustered when the subject shifts towards Dick and heavenly matters. Watching her response, Yuma teases lightly, seeing odd emotions upward inside Aileen. Awkwardness builds as Aileen tries to describe her emotions. Finally, each stop inside silent, realizing, agreeing to maintain sure emotions secluded for currently. Yuma wonders whether they depend too heavily on Dick, as Aileen insists she can manage her emotions independently. She thinks on his constant efforts for companions and feels his appearance level from afar inside the metropolis. Resolved not to hesitate, Yuma proposes knowing him straightforwardly, rather of holding inside unspoken ideas. News comes from Opening Avenue regarding the White Capricornus. There, Dick faces different person, removing pretense as Strain stands among them. Beneath the moonlight, Dick faces his past mentor atop the tower. Beside the association grounds at evening, Dick confronted a muscular fighter holding a huge hammer. The fighter revealed Dick's concealment and seen the white Capricorns, creating the hammer above. The person charged ahead, certain the person earlier him was the individual he had been searching for. Quietly, Dick studied the rash swing, seeing the strike committed completely lacking regard for recovery. In a rapid motion, he flicked a little sword, deflecting the blow and cracking the position under his opponent. Dick's sword encountered a shimmering barrier, showing a defensive magic that repelled the blow and nullified his edge. The fighter explained that Ghost Reflect might negate single physical strike, making foes to waste their power. Lifting his hammer anew, he reaffirmed devotion to his mentor and refused reliance on borrowed energy. Recollections of their opening encounter showed as he praised her influence, as Dick's concentration momentarily faltered. Detecting motion close, Dick noticed different foe hid back the trees, verifying the clear fighter was solely a decoy. A disguised girl extended her arm and activated a huge mana ring over the association, starting a large-scale magic rock columns erupted from the earth, tearing the positions separate and making the secret attackers inside the open. Within the upheaval, Dick progressed and gave a straight blow towards his nearest opponent. Expecting Ghost Reflect, he launched consecutive blows, immense their guard and driving them slamming way. With opposition crushed, Dick and his ally proceeded ahead, lacking worry for secrecy. The disguised noblewoman pledged self as Dick's escort, entrusting her security to him as preparing to eliminate the danger forward. Lacking doubt, Dick lifted her inside his arms and rushed ahead, rejecting to let her lose back. Foe mages attacked from the roof, launching flame and ice magic towards the approaching pair. As airborne, she deployed layered defensive mana, intercepting the barrage and limiting the damage about them. Disrupting across the attack, Dick carried her over the barrier and landed within, where more foes awaited. A robed foe released immense spiritual energy, activating Ghost Actor Eyes and flooding his frame with borrowed power. Watching from over, Dick noticed the SSS-class spell's stress, aware similar energy would finally destroy its user. Seeing the neckband measured him, Dick shielded Mylaraka and shifted to stop the manipulation. She started chanting a limited damage magic as he arranged his sword. When the empowered foe attacked, Dick encountered him head-on, hitting across the swirling mana. Dick severed the enemy's energy caused with quiet sword, disrupting Ghost Actor Eyes and departing the robed person collapsing on the roof. As steady reverted, Dick noticed the real mastermind as the mage who had formerly taught him. He rejected seizing the association, stating he had merely arrived inside. Lacking caution, her appearance manifested immediately across pure mana. She approached and confronted Dick, asserting that regardless his growth, his heart stayed the equal. 5 ages afterward, Dick confronted his past mentor, who seemed unchanged and quietly asked the disguise he yet wore. Waiting throughout the roof, she observed him carefully, observing that regardless moment next, Dick reacted steadily, refusing the notion that he was yet a child and challenging her motives. She accused him of pretending indifference, indicating nostalgia showed the time he noticed her anew. With silent assurance, she overtook he would agree her regardless of her efforts. Milaraka confronted the past mentor, declaring she might not overlook the harm done and rejecting to remain silent. The lady reacted quietly, assured that her bond with Dick stayed intact regardless the next ages. As strain rose, Milaraka activated a mana ring, asserting that Dick was not someone to be measured. Dick stopped her intervention, stating he was unharmed by the provocations and chose to confront his mentor personally. Creating his sword under the evening sky, Dick confessed his history limits. The past mentor unsheathed her sword and reminded Dick she had shaped his skills, pressing him to confront her straightforwardly. Under the moon, she swore to wound and restore him as in their history guidance. Dick refused to treat the battle as practice, preferring to battle with real purpose. Vitality rose as she disappeared, shifting back him in a moment. Reappearing at his inside, she launched a critical blow to complete the fight. 5 ages following their parting, Dick answered her teleportation by replicating it. Swords collided as he released Ghost Sword, rejecting restraint and proving he had grown outside her plans. Dick clashes swords with the silver-haired lady atop the castle, halting her abrupt strike beneath the moonlit sky. She withdraws and hits gracefully, as Dick steadies personally, knowing he has copied her teleportation energy. Throughout the courtyard, he weighs the prince and the hidden back the teleport crystals. Watching him cautiously, she records his restraint and lack of help in relic study. Following verifying his security, she decides to guide his growth. Regardless, different girls worry. Now on the roof, clash worsens as harsh truths regarding devotion and jealousy are aimed towards Dick's fragile role, creating his palm. Dick triggers Mind Protect, quietly resisting personal provocation as exposing his perception-based skill. Recollections disclose him fighting a scattering worm, chanting mana regardless grave injuries. Acknowledgement trails, seeing his foolish care and the rescue he formerly carried forth. Calm and steady, Dick announces he intend to intervene, asserting control over her kept presence. Overlooking the moonlit royal, she shows that ancient titles and signs existed earlier Dick's coming, indicating incidents were previously doomed. Waiting throughout the roof, Dick hears as she assertions those signs turn leads for a forgotten realm. Turning somewhat, she announces that if Dick wins, answers intent be offered. Vitality crowds as Ghost Sword emerges, but she responds with the uncommon Ghost Barrier. Seeing her mastery, Dick stays careful as she hints at Ghost Armor's greater energy. With immense power, she fires a racing strike, declaring Dick's guard inadequate on her energy. Force crashes way, but Dick bears back his protect as rubble scatters throughout the roof. Quiet trails as observers detect his emptiness, and he quietly questions to accept the opening shift. She insists her barrier stays unbreakable, assured no straight blow can destroy it. Unshaken, Dick conditions he intent not depend on brute power, preferring different way to loss her. Beneath the moonlight, Dick observes his master's unchanged appearance, her energy huge and presence, yet immense following 5 ages. As he kept guidance following beating the fiend lord, strain deepens when she wonders his pity, refusing every sympathy in his look. Firm and honest, Dick admits his nearby self cannot surpass her power. Steady, she tells him that neither her barrier nor her guard can be pierced by him. Dick rushes ahead across the rain of power, hitting continually as remembering the promise formerly created in the village. Steel collides on the radiant barrier, but her ghost barrier expands, halting his move with absolute guard. Understanding dawns that the barrier develops a perfect protective field outside ordinary strikes. Changing midair, Dick tries to analyze its structure, preparing a countermeasure earlier force. With violent determination, he grips his sword and releases Ghost free, driving his energy towards its limit. Dick drives his empowered blow ahead, shattering fragments of the radiant barrier as he closes the space towards his mentor. Surprise crosses her confront when his sword pierces across, proving his speed currently rivals her personal. Determined, Dick remembers their pierced promise and fires a upward Ghost Sword strike, lacking doubt. Blinding exchanges erupt throughout the roof as many slashes collide. Dividing inside afterimages, Dick releases Phantom's sword and 1,000 slashes blink. Immense level her absolute guard, relentless strikes rain way, as Dick's afterimages attack her barrier from each direction, lacking pause. The junior girl observes in surprise, seeing the techniques as Eileen's skills rather than Dick's personal. Anxious and shaken, she summons his name as feeling the fight spiraling more. Reappearing back his mentor, Dick admits his adventurer powers solo cannot surpass her. With sharpened determination, he progresses to disclose the greater energy he has maintained secret. Following the fight, troops search the beaten White Capricorn as Dick. Authorities detain Novia, the goat leader who wore a neckband by her personal intent as investigations inside. The present guilds were announced. Throughout the report, it was disclosed that Dick's mentor was summoned the Jester. A century prior, that mentor founded the capital's opening Adventurers Association and owned energy outside SS level. Over moment, she collected exceptional talents, earned royal faith, and turned known as the Ophidian Enchantress, 10 ages following establishing the opening association. The mentor disappeared from the metropolis, departing the organization lacking a symbol or leading name. Following her vanishing, 12 guilds arose, each adopting its personal color as fighters divided and grew split factions. Shortly, charges extend that she had deceived all and abandoned the institution she originally built. Since her real name was hardly disclosed, the alias Jester appeared, linked to the unused gray color. However, the White Capricorn leader stayed faithful. 5 ages following the Fiend Lord's lose, monster asks decreased, lowering association movement and weakening the capital's strongest faction. Within that decline, the White Capricorn leader applied magical collars. Finally, the incident rested, and the matter was weighed shut, lacking public escalation. Inside a silent chamber, Dick stayed seated near his bound mentor, preferring quiet over immediate exposure. Staying vigilant, he guarded her cautiously, purpose on resolving events earlier, informing the authorities. As his mentor lay frail, doubt became that she was not an ordinary entity, but item far older and concealed. Legends inside the Fiend tribes talked of spirits who lived outside natural weaknesses. Although she was plainly no elf, stories described a wandering presence able of granting blessings or curses, wielding vast mana and level immortality. Watching her state, Dick weighed the chance that she was a remnant from the Age of Gods. Regardless the immense implications, he stayed calm. In a frail condition, she disclosed there was single step she might not finish solo depending on Dick's appearance. Realizing, he weighed how extended beings like her had existed in this world. Records implied similar spirits had lived since humanity's beginning, enduring across many ages. Remembering her plea to be killed, he noticed it was the move she might not perform self. Regardless that appeal, Dick chose refusal. Choosing to confront her facts formally, she awakened. Beside the bedside, the maid reminded Dick that a disciple's role was to firm his mentor rather than arbiter her harshly. Regardless her grave determination, he admitted his failure to honor and former promise and guard her road. Guilt showed as he confessed betraying someone precious, as hardly truly realizing his master's tries. Noticing his distress, the maid silently wrapped her arms about him in comfort. Across that hug, she asked him not to carry every fault for the master's pain. Collected at the doorway, the companions observed Dick quietly. Single by single, they moved within, expressing worry that he had confronted events solo throughout the painful talk. Although certain attempted to lighten the atmosphere, their reddened gaze described worry and remaining feeling. Waiting near, the maid softly addressed him, noting his determination as remaining at his aid. Failing to completely hide his tears, Dick took their appearance, letting his vulnerable aid to display momentarily. Near the bed, Dick admitted he had believed he would carry those emotions solo for the relax of his routine. Listening in quiet, the sisters gentler, seeing how strongly the burden had weighed on him. Shortly, gentle smiles overcame strain as ease extended across the chamber. Seeing their responses, awkwardness crept over Dick when he realized they had seen events. Afterward, beyond, glow teasing continued, soothing the mood and restoring their regular warmth. As a child, Dick faltered with uncontrollable mana that erupted from him, lacking caution, departing him frightened under the silent sky. As playing beside the village, a risky enchanted creature abruptly seemed, making the kids inside panic. Instinct drove him to free his energy, hitting the beast way to guard his friends. Later, dread overcame thanks, and the locals avoided him as whispers extend. Solitude trailed through the morning, events shifted anew. Within a cave, Dick confronted a frail wyvern glaring at him with fading hatred. Its wounded frame trembled on the chilly rock, marks along its hide disclosed. It had been almost killed by fighters. Realizing, gradually overcame his wariness. Seeing personally in the hunted beast, he bowed his protect regardless the abrupt cry rather of withdrawing. He touched the wyvern softly, shaken by isolation and emptiness. At that fragile time, a mysterious girl seemed back him, calling his name softly. Fatigue seized Dick as the girl steadied him. Her appearance steady as the wounded wyvern lay silently back them. Lowering its face, the beast displayed no malice, as although remorse overcame the hatred born from pain. Gentle mana mended its terrible injuries under her touch, departing Dick stunned by energy outside argue. Fatigue overtook him as her palm stroked his locks. He afterward awakened indoors, sunlight spilling throughout the level. Seeing she had stored them each, urgency showed as Dick confessed his dread of dying, thinking endurance was the solely purpose departed to him. Rather of granting that plea, the girl hit his face lightly, refusing his self-destructive determination. Uncertainty overcame despair as he stared above, stunned by her reply. A gentle grin encountered his look, firm and unwavering. She reminded him that his routine was destined to maintain between people, not finish in solitude. Recollections showed of the cave where Dick formerly lay near the injured wyvern, ignorant he had previously begun shifting her future. Seated throughout from her currently, he noticed the dread of missing her had awakened emotions, extended forgotten. Across the silent window, she noticed the isolation he constantly carried. Meeting him softly, she confessed solely he might stir similar emotions inside her. Her gentle grin revived the playful youth she formerly understood. Resolve filled Dick as he decided to atone for history mistakes, level if forgiveness hardly arrived. Seated earlier her, he took duty and gave to share every burden she yet carried. Quietly, she questioned for a one promise about the distant finish of his routine. Following short doubt, he consented to confront that later jointly. Though impossible it appeared. Although punishment awaited them, he chose hardly to let her stay solo anew. When questioned regarding her name, she confessed she had forgotten it, having gone ages lacking anyone applying it. Dick recognized her growth and gave to treat her as an equal, suggesting he had a step in mind. A ware grin crossed her confront as she felt mischief back his offer. Shortly following, she stood within a shop dressed as a maid appointed to cause the day's employment. Beneath bright glow she carried self with calm dignity in her fresh position. Within the shop, firm laws were enforced as her uniform was inspected, and she was warned to behave safely earlier customers. Tuck turned towards disguises and additional recruits as Dick observed silently from the doorway. Shortly, different girl in matching attire joined the lineup, waiting near her with calm faces. Jointly they confronted ahead, identical changes attracting focus across the chamber. Questioned regarding her name anew, she quietly confessed she yet had none, and allowed companions to choose. Within the shop, Dick evaluated Lady Eileen's performance, observing her bright grin but lack of cautious focus to smaller facts. A maid with fox-like features approached respectfully, mentioning history whispers as apologizing for prior misunderstandings. Shortly, various sisters collected jointly, describing they had arrived willingly and were arranged to agree duty. Strain softened as forgiveness was gave, restoring harmony between them. With lively pride the fox-eared maid praised Dick's history assist to her village, showing silent admiration later. She turned his grand disciple, waiting proudly near Dick. Inside the silent mansion grounds, Dick faces a female warrior as she develops a shining magic in her palm. He raises his sword quietly. Taking the guidance trial, vitality wraps about their arms, ghost energy coating his sword as bright glow crowds along hers. Resolve firms their faces. Abruptly, each dash ahead. Rapid moves tear throughout the field as the space vanishes. A violent battle erupts and Dick withstands her strong blow. Swords clash jointly, showing the duel's fierceness. Dick pushes ahead, but her response stands arming him inside a weakness as their swords slam continually in near combat. Seizing him first, she swings difficult, driving her shining blade towards him with critical power. Several arcs of glow wave outside, as Dick channels ghost energy inside his sword. A huge barrier of vitality erupts among them, blocking his move and shaking the position. Driving history the barrier, Dick fires his limit erupted and recovers handling of the battle. Dick develops a ghost sword from condensed energy, reinforcing his broken sword to withstand the force of her radiant blade. Throughout the courtyard, they trade relentless strikes, sparks bursting as steel and vitality collide, lacking pause. Changing his timing, he crashes across her protect, splintering her guard with measured power. Energy floods his blade formally more, driving his following move. Slipping history her stance, Dick army her backward and wins the upper palm. Her sword ghost develops a protective membrane of glow, but Dick feels the barrier weakening as his force proceeds, each firm their inhaling gaze sharp as they ready single last transfer. Swords extend completely, knowing at equal attain, neither moving inside. As the method eases, his ghost sword loses shape, finishing the battle lacking a plain victor. Quiet lands over the courtyard, and Dick receives the result, seeing his weaknesses regardless the intense guidance. Following the fight, Dick suggests recovery mana, but she declines and departs the courtyard. Insisting relaxed intent be enough, evening lands silently as he moves off, ignorant of her remaining strain. Within her chamber, she stands earlier a mirror, arms crossed over the ripped fabric of her uniform. The harm shows how near his blow had arrived, making her to inspect the rip cautiously. Flustered but glad, she changes rapidly, certain he hardly noticed her vulnerable time. Solo in her chamber, she thinks on the fight as cautiously changing her attire. Minor unease stays from the battle, but she dismisses it, certain its intent vanish lacking help. Abruptly, Dick enters, seeing her state immediately and calling what she needs. Strain stands as she understands her condition. He shifts off quietly, giving assist lacking doubt, caught off protect. She pauses, unsure whether to agree his worry as the silent strain among them deepens. Dick enters, gaining her shocked earlier mirror, strain upward as she composes self. Beside the silent courtyard pool, Dick spots abrupt motion beyond, feeling items sudden unfolding. Within the chamber, he discovers her shocked, strain upward as she understands he has moved. Awkwardness overwhelms her, prompting a quick choice to flee the uncomfortable time. Lacking doubt, she hurries towards the pool, departing him frozen at the doorway. Water sprays noisily as she immerses self. Sure, the confusion has worsened among them. Seeing the condition, Dick immediately shifts the handle, apologetic and rushing to depart the chamber. Steam covers her as she drops self inside the water, guilt mixing with remaining awkwardness. Beyond the doorway, he pauses, blaming personally for entering lacking caution. Departed solo, she thinks silently as he moves off, keeping deliberate space. Recollections appear of his constant restraint, reinforcing her belief that he constantly avoids crossing private boundaries. Waiting beyond, Dick thinks on his obliviousness as she observes him across the upward steam. Resting in the tub, she examines his response, seeing she had secreted her emotions more cautiously than anticipated. Drawing courage, she decides to disclose a fact she had maintained guarded through currently. He hears silently from outside the doorway, agreeing to preserve their bond lacking, shifting its balance. A gentle, steady lands among them, soothing the prior strain inside mutual realizing. In the tub, she admits the prior blow, yet aches somewhat, prompting worry from Dick at the doorway. He advises quick curing to prevent marks, speaking earnestly as attempting to stay calm. His uncomfortable mention of her entity a girl deepens her blush, easing the atmosphere, surprisingly flustered by her response. He shifts off, unsure how to correct his speech. Regardless awkwardness, she calms him softly, reminding them each of their extended friendship. She stops him from turning, asking him to remain regardless her clear weakness. Drawing courage, she asks his assist straightforwardly, confessing she trusts him more than anyone else. Flustered but resolved, Dick consents and extends cautiously towards the wounded space lacking looking off. His trembling palm applies curing mana, changing awkwardly beneath her training. Thought in the mirror, each confront their closeness, seeing their friendship has silently begun to alter. As she stays in the tub, and sudden visitor emerges, making abrupt uncertainty in the steamy chamber. The newcomer states her appearance quietly, praising Dick's prior performance and easing focus from the uncomfortable hall. Dick focuses on curing, extending recovery glow as she steadies self beneath his cautious training. Power comes rapidly, and the unease eases as each stay calm, waiting jointly later. The steady mood departs her, flustered by events that just occurred. Shaken by the uncomfortable strain, Dick rapidly excuses personally departing the tub space in haste. Shortly following, he stands near his mentor beyond the castle, regaining calm as roll summons. Within the grand chamber, murmurs fill the hall as officials and knights collect in anticipation. The chief arbiter begins the official session, ordering quiet. Earlier the court. Charges are announced steadily, and Dick confronts the rushes with firm determination near his mentor. Earlier, the tribunal. Evidences show detailing unlawful rings and the exploitation of beastkin for profit. Officials verify victims were freed across Dick's partnership, but emphasize the remaining harm and size of abuse. The court announces a severe sentence, demanding extended imprisonment for those accountable. Additional penalties are announced, and his mentor recognizes the facts lacking protest. Within the solemn chamber, Dick asks permission to talk, waiting steady regardless the burden of judgment. Senior Minister stands with paired Duke delegates. Permission granted. He presents personally with assurance, highlighting his influence and reputation inside the royal references key aristocrats and association witness, outlining their positions in exposing corruption and stabilizing the metropolis. Focus changes to a veiled youthful duchess whose control and mystery leadership silent respect throughout the chamber. Noting unrest in the metropolis, the minister urges the court to remain judgment. Asked by the court, the minister asks permission to clarify the crisis, promising the metropolis. He shows that under the royal rests a bound labyrinth whose ancient restricting is weakening. Murmurs extend as he states the metropolis was built over a pit imprisoning a risky entity. He recounts how a legendary hero beaten that spirit pair millennia ago. With firm determination, he announces that hero was his mentor, linking the history straightforwardly to the nearby threat. The minister warns that if the bound spirit resurfaces, the royal itself might collapse inside ruin. Turning towards the court, he announces that the burden must lose upon those able of facing similar threat. He names Dick and the guild's founder, remembering Dick's history triumph over the Fiend King. With solemn determination, he formally asks they reach the labyrinth and prevent the impending calamity. Dick stood earlier the council, recognized as single of the heroes who beaten the Fiend King and afterward founded the Fighters Association. The officials ordered that he examine a risky below labyrinth promising the royal metropolis. A noblewoman promised preparations and sufficient gains regardless lacking combat energy. Elite fighters from each faction would join the expedition to attain the deepest level rapidly, with an opening suspicion. Dick took the task quietly. Dick formally took the official appeal, stating that subjugating creatures and exploring labyrinths were roles of fighters. Ease extend between the collected association delegates as they showed assurance in his leadership. Talk turned towards partnership, noting that lacking help from able companions, conquering the labyrinth would be impossible. The council announced the inquest adjourned following verifying the plan. Shortly following, the minister collected the aristocrats anew to start strategic seeking for the labyrinth expedition. Key shapes were revealed, including the captain of the knights, the archbishop, and a prominent aristocrat overseeing the matter. Dick, founder of the Fighters Association, heard as documents detailing a secret danger under the royal metropolis were showed. Records displayed that exploration had solely reached the 50th level of the ruins labyrinth of Belsaris. No appear entrance or maps outside that level existed, verifying it as a bound and secret labyrinth, and prior expedition guided by the warrior order had moved 1,000 ages ago, but hardly completely reverted. History records disclosed a worm chimera on the 50th level that annihilated the expedition, making the exploration to be abandoned. Researchers seen the beast as the snake of Belsaris. They concluded the chimera stayed on the 50th level as greater levels probable grip level greater dangers. Officials warned that outside the opening level, teleportation circles gave no guarantees of security. Dick suggested approaching cautiously, securing each section and establishing measured teleportation gestures as they descended. He proposed reactivating the former teleportation circles and letting fighters to move as gaining power and securing each cleared level. Council people praised his foresight, although worry arose over who would leadership the White Capricorns throughout the mission. Focus shifted towards leadership as the expedition needed a firm person to straight every association army. Dick consented to take leadership briefly through the labyrinth was cleared. Regardless support, he steadily refused lasting control. The noblewoman showed ease, promising to maintain order between the capital's guilds as Dick arranged for the expedition. Shortly following, focus reverted to scheduling, and last arrangements for the labyrinth exploration were set. 3 weeks afterward, crowds collected earlier the castle as a royal address was gave on behalf of the king. The princess announced that the bound evil under the metropolis had awakened following pair 1,000 ages, calling for unity and courage. She asked the royal to remain jointly to secure different 1,000 ages of prosperity. From the castle balcony, blessings were gave to those who would descend inside the bound labyrinth under the metropolis. Between the collected fighters, excitement became as they anticipated meeting the worm chimera rumored to protect the depths. Dick stood with the knights and mages, verifying that leadership positions were rested earlier departure. Assurance extend as trusted leaders arranged to battle on the front lines. With fresh equipment prepared, the party finalized preparations for the next expedition. Celine seemed in a maid outfit, teasing Dick as staying near and declaring her devotion to him. Her teasing conduct flustered him, attracting amused responses from the companions close. She kept provoking him, enjoying his flustered face and tightening her grip. The surrounding allies joked regarding his limits towards older women, escalating his unease. Dick regained calm and proven that all was prepared to depart for the labyrinth. The party collected as Celine confidently announced the labyrinth merely a den of creatures. As Dick instructed, the teleportation crystal-activated glow enveloped the team as the ancient ring reacted, and they arranged for immediate combat upon coming. Vitality rose about Celine's crystal. Finishing the transfer to the below site, they materialized inside a bright rock chamber showing the labyrinth's opening level. Seeing the departure of sentries, Dick felt threat as item abruptly shifted close. A fierce cry shook the chamber, and Dick immediately felt a mighty appearance descending from overseeing the sound. He arranged for fight as his allies noticed the danger had previously reached their level. The worm chimera appeared earlier them, the monster formerly bound on the 50th level currently waiting on the opening. Dick and the team reach a broken level, seeing odd marks as worry stands regarding the troops stationed there. They shift ahead rapidly as a unit, raising speed as keeping line across the corridor. Dick feels a secret appearance, seeing item is guarding from the secret close. The team slows when a big person emerges forward, showing a feathered beast outside the ledge. A worm chimera appears completely huge over them, verifying the threat Dick detected prior. Dick spots troops beneath strike as the chimera progresses, attracting focus to the immediate danger. He raises his palm and creates a barrier, guarding the troops from the incoming blow. The chimera rushes and releases a mighty blast as Dick grips his role. A alert beam shoots ahead, hitting across the battleground with measured power. Dick hardens the barrier, expanding its layers to endure the strike and guard the team. The chimera stares strongly, preparing different blow as its claws dig inside the position with upward aggression. It roars noisily and raises its huge arm, promising Dick and the team waiting earlier it. A female fighter leaps ahead, moving space as Dick observes quietly from back. She releases a light base strike, hitting the chimera with several accurate impacts. Regardless the attack, the chimera bears and powers up, intensifying its appearance as Dick and the team brace bodies. The women assess the chimera quietly, seeing its regeneration as preparing to accept action jointly. Single mage summons earth mana, creating huge grounds that shift the battleground and restrict the creature's motion. Different warrior leaps ahead and gives a mighty kick, hitting the chimera with alert power. The position falls under it, making the beast downward as the strike disrupts its balance. A fierce explosion trails, shaking the space as Dick and the team observe the outcome from a space. The chimera recovers momentum, roaring strongly as it readies different strike on Dick and the team. A mage starts a large-scale magic, drawing vitality as Dick stands prepared near her. A complex mana array develops, trapping the chimera inside a structured barrier of shining symbols. The line firms, compressing the beast as the vitality seals it from flee. With the magic finished, the team observes from over, noting the vast energy applied to contain the chimera. The team observes an odd glow inside the crater, considering it arrives from those beaten by the chimera. A cleric crowds the wandering spirits, leading them softly as a holy glow covers her. The glow condenses inside a spirit gem seen as the crystallized stays of the worm chimera. With the space secured, the team readies to depart, discussing the reason to regroup and reinforce their role. They realize the condition is more risky than anticipated. Led by Cody's glow, the team progresses across the ruins, keeping direction regardless the complex terrain. They eliminate remaining creatures and secure the space as assisting frail people throughout the progress. Dick stays calm, suppressing distractions and centering on keeping handling in the strained condition. More monitoring shows creatures have mutated over moment, becoming more risky than anticipated. A toxic pool, they identify poisonous beasts and continue cautiously preparing for potential dangers forward. The cleric purifies the corrupted pool, freeing a bright glow that moves throughout the space. The water finishes entirely, removing poison and restoring the environment to a secure condition. The team extends different level and discovers a suspicious chamber containing an odd orb mechanism. They assess the tool cautiously, considering its meaning as choosing who might interact with it. Talk proceeds as they suspect the mechanism controls the labyrinth, preparing for the following shift carefully. The team examines the orb mechanism, seeing it must be activated to continue more across the labyrinth. Yuma nears eagerly and grabs the orb, behaving earlier the companions can stop her. Uncertainty moves as her action triggers the tool, catching all off protect. Mana circles abruptly appear under each member, showing the activation of a secret function. The team is teleported separately, departing the chamber empty as they are sent to mysterious locations. The team is abruptly engulfed by teleportation mana, as Dick understands they are entity separated. He comes solo in a shadowy chamber, rapidly assessing the unknown interior. A huge skeletal beast emerges back him, showing immediate threat. More spirit creatures collect, showing that he has been set within a snare filled with foes. Dick responds immediately, preparing to battle as checking if his companions stay secure above. Separated companions confront ghouls quietly, holding their position as assessing the spirit danger about them. Yuma's cleansing fades close foes, reducing their threat as the team recovers handling of the condition. Above, Dick fights solo, cutting across skeletons as attempting to locate his allies. Throughout the fight, he spots item odd, feeling a troubling altar shaping Eileen. Covered anew, Dick understands Eileen was teleported separately, raising worry regarding her security. Dick fires his energy outside weaknesses, activating a tougher condition to deal with the surrounding foes. A wide area strike erupts, destroying several creatures at formerly and opening the battleground. He progresses rapidly towards an exit, moving across the cleared road lacking doubt. Applying heightened feels, Dick detects a distant sound, identifying Eileen's appearance close. He hurries towards the cause and summons forth, seeing she is in threat inside different chamber. Eileen is trapped by a slime beast, her frame bound as it starts to overwhelm her entirely. Dick discovers her suspended inside the mass. Seeing the beast has previously taken handling of the condition, he tries to strike but stops, realizing straight strikes would harm Eileen as well. Cautiously, Dick weighs different method as watching how the slime grips her in location. Remembering its traits, he readies to use the slime's limits to rescue Eileen safely. Dick channels his energy inside his sword, preparing an accurate blow on the slime, restraining Eileen. A icing method moves rapidly, surrounding the slime with ice and stopping its motion. The frozen mass shatters, freeing Eileen as the slime's grip gives entirely. She falls to the position, frail but freed. As Dick verifies her state, Eileen recovers calm as the threat finishes, and Dick stays close to ensure her security. She steadies self, regaining assurance as she readies to battle with Dick supporting her close. She rushes ahead decisively, drawing power inside her fists as centering on the remaining danger. A mighty blow is released, driving a concentrated shockwave slamming inside the target. The force moves outside, shattering the frozen remnants inside many fragments. Following the strike, Eileen observes the outcome quietly as Dick stays near her, making the condition is beneath handling. Eileen thinks on the fight as Dick states he applied a method he had solely lately learned. Abruptly, Eileen loses power and stumbles ahead, failing to maintain her balance. Dick rapidly catches her, supporting her as she tries to stay firm following the battle. Shaken, she gives way, remembering her history power and seeing her latest error. Dick calms her silently, helping her recover calm as the condition ultimately settles. She rests somewhat, speaking regarding her preferences as the strain from the fight starts to vanish. Dick calms her quietly, expressing assurance in managing later dangers as they remain near jointly. She admits her reliance on him, expressing weakness as staying beside his aid. Dick responds awkwardly, unclear how to answer as Eileen proceeds, pressing her emotions. Eileen crowds courage, silently affirming her determination as the time lands among them. Then Eileen pauses, expressing unease as she stands near to Dick, following the intense fight slowly. She shifts nearer, watching his response as strain mounts among them. Caught off protect, Dick tries to remain calm as Eileen stays inside his attain. Abruptly, the relax of the team comes, interrupting the time and attracting focus to them. Awkwardness trails as each rapidly split, seeing they have been seen by all close. Dick stands inside a shining mana ring on the opening level, covered by allies following, securing the space, lacking delay. Returning to the association, he is received by people amazed that the 6th level fell quicker than anticipated. Confirmation of the opening floor's security causes to immediate seeking for the 7th level attack. Tasks are given as companions split to complete their roles. With priorities plain, Dick departs anew to maintain conquering the labyrinth. A few minutes afterward, Eileen is asked to arrival to the appear and alter earlier persisting greater inside the labyrinth. On the 7th level, Dick examines her quietly and questions how the fresh equipment senses throughout readiness. She tries her motion and discovers the outfit comfortable, letting simpler motion than her regular equipment. Elsewhere, a ally offers a newly made mana energy measuring tool. Built with uncommon lodestone, the device is made to precisely measure Dick's vast power. Eileen decides to test the mana measuring tool self, earlier offering every findings to Dick. Following hiding the device securely, she feels an odd response, but proceeds lacking doubt. The team moves onto the 7th level and confronts an endless desert landscape. Harsh sunlight pours over the sand, verifying the sudden environment inside the labyrinth. Lacking caution, the position starts to shake under them, showing an imminent danger. A swarm of huge sand drakes rises throughout the desert, their bodies cutting across the dunes towards the party. Dick and his friends stay ahead quietly, choosing to confront the beast, lacking escape. Blinding power erupts as strikes collide, driving shockwaves throughout the sands and splitting the battleground. From under the position, a colossal worm-like monster bursts above, showing a circular maw lined with teeth. The beast thrashes fiercely, earlier collapsing, departing the desert silent, formally more. The party gazes at the huge sandworm, seeing its scale surpasses their plans. Talk trails regarding conserving power, as the surrounding desert emerges to be the creature's territory. An elf moves ahead, asking to handle the following attack alongside Cody as testing the measuring tool. She lifts an ancient royal scepter, channeling dormant energy across its core. With alert determination, she summons upon the control of kingship, preparing to release greater power. The elf unveils her ghost king shape, radiating control as she readies to confront the sandworm alongside the companions. Seeing the foe has noticed them, she coordinates with Dick and their friend to launch a straight attack. Enhanced by mana, Dick propels personally ahead with a strengthened leap towards the huge beast. He drives his sword great inside the sandworm's huge frame, piercing its guard. Following his blow, their friend releases a reinforced slash that cleaves across the monster, finishing the fight. The wounded sandworm slams inside the canyon barrier as Dick orders Verlaine to press the strike. Waiting earlier the huge beast, Verlaine recognizes it as the floor's ruler and steadies her determination. Vitality crowds about her scepter, forming a concentrated wave of shadowy energy. The blast erupts ahead, hitting great inside the sandworm's frame and shattering the surrounding rock. When the tremors vanish, the monster stays collapsed, departing the battleground silent. Verlaine sustains her magic, attracting and surrounding vitality to overwhelm the frail sandworm. Shadowy spheres tear inside the creature's frame as she states her mana borrows energy from close souls. The stress worsens and her power starts to vanish as the magic consumes her reserves. Dick catches her earlier she falls, steadying her as the battleground ultimately builds silent. Afterward, the measuring tool responds fiercely, showing her mana output has surpassed extraordinary levels regardless the toll. The beaten sandworm rests still on the canyon barrier, and the party readies to maintain ahead. Verlaine pauses, troubled by how far she depends on Dick throughout battles. Seeing her state, Dick insists on supporting her just as formally regardless her questions. He raises her cautiously, guiding her throughout the desert as she recovers her power. Guarding silently, the companions agree the time earlier, resuming their move across the labyrinth. Dick pauses, feeling a known strain as he progresses cautiously across the bright passage. The party extends the 8th level, gaining a silent lake and open opening lacking clear creatures. Noticing no immediate dangers, they choose to relax and restore their stamina and mana. An elf maid retrieves a magically enhanced storage box, arranging supplies as companions remain alert. Shortly following, Shelley nears Dick with a grave face, preparing to address an vital matter. Shelley observes strong movement on the 6th level and proposes investigating the 7th. Preferring to continue ahead, Dick assigns the 6th level to Kasumi and recommends consulting association people. If issues arise, is able to touch him anytime. Shelley recognizes her weaknesses and notices this task as a stay nearer. To his aid, at the association hall, reports are gave as people maintain order. Kasumi Kushirina emerges calm, seeing Shelley's voice and remembering their history knowing. Then Kasumi grips her sword, stating she managed the 6th level guard and currently has moment to wield her sword anew. Her firm gaze forced Shelley, showing the vast power secret under calm. Regardless lacking malice, Kasumi's SS rank appearance solo creates Shelley's frame strained inside a tane of that sword. Following talk of the 7th level, Kasumi permits the strategy and directs them ahead. Pair association, people stay forward, formally introducing bodies and pledging partnership for the next expedition. A person called Zect presents personally as a representative from Isilver Aquarius. His allies reassure the team, describing his arrival as misleading and giving their help for the expedition. Sakuya moves ahead confidently, declaring her skill to detect sandworms secret under the desert level. Liza trails with a lively salute, stating she can handle traps and treasure chests regardless limited combat skill. Jointly they reach the 7th level, opening forth throughout the sand as the mission officially starts. The sand erupts fiercely as a huge vortex develops under their feet. A huge sandworm bursts above its huge frame, dwarfing plans and showing the threat secret under the steady appear. From over, its gaping maw begins, exposing rows of teeth as it falls towards a lone target. Frozen in surprise, the youthful adventurer understands the beast has decided her and braces instinctively for force. Rather of devouring her, the sandworm crashes inside the position close. Dick creates a dark illusion, forming a double that pulls the sandworm's focus as it tries to escape below. Applying that time, Shelley strikes with a lightning whip, catching the beast earlier it disappears. She spins ahead with a rolling smash, making the huge frame inside above. Her bound blade pierces its open maw, crushing across with critical power. The sandworm falls lifeless inside the sand, finishing the abrupt attack. Dick states that creatures target the weakest, confessing he applied her as bait to predict the strike. Close. They find buried rock structures, indicating an artificial facility secret under the sand. As they consider investigating, Dick abruptly responds, feeling motion regardless the departure of audible signs. He warns the companions that someone is guarding them, dismissing the idea of easy reinforcements. From inside a distant structure, a shadowed person observes their move and smiles silently. Ancient ruins appear along the mapped road where Dick and his party reach at a secret structure buried within the labyrinth. Inside the chamber, a serpent-marked mana ring shows the site's significance as Dick examines the line with alert focus. Knowledge focuses when he detects motion close. Paired sisters release a huge barrier above, trapping Dick among the huge columns. A hooded foe appears within the swirling power. Starting the long-awaited battle, paired sisters confront the hooded person as he directs his anger towards Dick, accusing him of failing to complete him earlier. Dick stands quietly back them, exposing that strong wards and warrior supervision were failing to restrain the intruder. Worry builds as they realize the bound mana was bypassed, indicating interference from a hidden mastermind. Mockery replaces partnership as the twins prepared bodies for fight. Elsewhere, a fierce tempest disrupts enchanted transfer, cutting off every external help. The paired sisters tighten their grips on bound arms, caution the hooded person that lacking Dick. Dick moves ahead and develops a dark spear, promising lethal power if the foe progresses more. Assurance stays with Dick as he predicts thrown arms intent fail on his wind mana. Abruptly, the hooded person releases bound swords, activating a method that floods the chamber with piercing projectiles. Swords slam towards Dick in immense numbers, making him to brace as the deadly attack falls. The hooded person shows 6 bindings strengthened by aristocrat mana, denying Dick every opportunity to depend on his secret. Those bindings wave wildly, blending with wind mana and forming unpredictable trajectories that encircle Dick from each direction. Pride covers the fighter as he proclaims the immense energy granted by his mentor. Lacking caution, the bindings shift targets and blow towards the twins beside the columns. Alarm flashes throughout their confronts as the redirected attack army immediate guard. Single paired extends forth in alarm as the redirected strike speeds towards her ally throughout the chamber level. Earlier force, Sakuya lunges ahead and pulls the endangered girl aside. They land beside a pillar, shaken but unharmed, as the attack proceeds, tearing across rock. Regaining attention, Single paired swings a spiked blade, smashing across incoming bindings to break their momentum. The hooded person answers by invoking wind energy, unleashing a fierce gust destined to sweep all off. A huge desert tornado erupts within the chamber, hurling Dick and the companions fiercely on the grounds and columns. Within the raging wind, single paired desperately extends for her sister. Their palms hardly contacting earlier, the tempest tears them separate. Her power fails as the present overwhelms her, making her hold to loosen as Dick is blown more off. Regret covers her ideas as she understands she might not guard anyone from the strike. When the winds stop, the hooded person stands laughing over their injured bodies. The hooded person boasts regarding immense energy, savoring the sight of his opponents lying beaten throughout the chamber level. Satisfaction eases when he spots they survived the force. Dick stands gradually, seeing the enemy's appearance and steadying personally regardless his injuries. Realizing dawns on the fighter as he understands Dick gentler, the lose applying dark mana to barrier his companions. Although injured, single-paired stands protectively earlier her injured sister, rejecting to yield. The hooded person lashes forth with his bindings, catching single-paired mid-air and restricting her tightly earlier she can land. Suspended on a pillar, she tries as the foe taunts her helpless condition and firms the restraints. Agony moves throughout her arms as sharpened tips hover near. Regardless humiliation and dread, she bears quietly, rejecting to beg as the fighter laughs. Drawing determination, she announces her security meaningless as extended as her sister and comrades survive, provoking his anger. The hooded person observes quietly as single-paired stands and shields her injured sister with her personal frame. Determination firms in her gaze as she quietly commits to protecting Lotte at every price. Although knowing of her limits, she stands steady earlier the immense foe. Back her, the wounded sister urges escape, hoping to spare her from more harm. Ignoring that plea, the waiting paired is hit way and falls, departing her sister in stunned quiet. The hooded person laughs as the injured paired rests bleeding earlier him. Quiet moves throughout the damaged chamber as the twins and Dick lie still on the fractured level. Blood pools near the injured sister as the other tries to lift self-regardless trembling limbs. Over them, the hooded person nears quietly, declaring their lives meaningless. Under his energy, crouching faintly, the wounded paired stares above as he taunts her endurance. With cruel purpose, he extends towards her, confront, seeing her likeness to the sister near her. The injured paired begs quietly for assist as the hooded person progresses, bindings poised to complete them. Uncertainty crosses his confront when abrupt incident breaks his handling over the bindings, and hidden power strikes, severing his restraint and driving his blade slamming off. The wounded girl watches up in surprise as a known person moves among her and the fighter. Dick stands back the foe and seizes him by the neckband, stopping the execution. Dick firms his hold on the hooded man's neckband as a silver-haired medic hurries towards the injured twins. Crouching near the wounded sister, the medic channels mana as Dick restrains the trying foe. Dread moves throughout the attacker's confront, as Dick shows he arrived following, feeling their severed bond. Tears ooze from the conscious parrot as she understands he crossed the desert to attain them. Ease relaxes her face as curing glow covers her senseless sister. Dick shifts somewhat as the wounded parrot observes him, her face uneven but hopeful. Holding the hooded person by the neckband, Dick requests an account for his appearance inside the ruins. Beneath force, the captive panics and starts exposing names linked to the plot. Cruel satisfaction surfaces as he boasts regarding wounding the sister outside finished recovery. Laughing wildly, he assertions revenge as the solely argue for orchestrating the strike. Dick finishes the interrogation abruptly and strikes the hooded person, dropping him heavily onto the rock level. Chilly rage covers Dick's look as he silences the captive entirely. Bindings lose uselessly about the shaken fighter as Dick shifts his inside, lacking dread. Panic moves across the hooded person as he feels his mana and voice failing. Shaken by despair, he crouches in smoke and admits his limits as craving greater energy. Crouching in smoke, the hooded person admits ordinary power intent hardly be enough to kill Dick. Odd tremor overtakes him, making Dick to shift as the foe mutters desperately. Shadowy vitality rises throughout his frame as he insists his energy belongs to him solo. His flesh twists fiercely, cracking and expanding as an inhuman cry covers the chamber. When the distortion lands, a beastly shape stays, departing Dick staring carefully. Dick confronts the newly transformed fiend as it moves shadowy wings. Dick stands prepared with his sword as the horned fiend progresses throughout the fractured position, as his companions stay back him. Abruptly, the fiend rushes. Dick fires his ghost sword and strikes continually, knowing the beast's head. Several cuts land, but the hardened frame fights. The harm remains minor and useless. With brute power, the fiend grabs the sword and drives Dick backward, overpowering him. Moments afterward, the creature's injuries near rapidly, showing an extraordinary curing skill. Dick learns the horned foe is a fiend lord, possessing regeneration, wings, and vast energy outside ordinary creatures. Accounts describe similar beings as city-destroying dangers, possibly people transformed inside labyrinths. Inside catastrophic spirits, the fiend lord abruptly slams inside the position, scattering rubble and shaking the battleground fiercely. Rejecting to escape, Dick fires his limit and propels personally ahead with heightened power. His sword cuts throughout the huge frame, delivering a forceful blow on the immense foe. Dick understands the foe deliberately sacrificed an arm to stop a fatal blow. Earlier him stands an entity no longer human, its transformed frame radiating immense menace and determination. A wave of energy erupts as the fiend lord roars, vitality cracking across the arena and making Dick to brace personally. Fierce winds spiral outside, forming a huge tornado that sweeps throughout the battleground and threatens all close. Within the confusion, Dick shifts to guard his allies. Dick moves ahead across the raging winds, cloak whipping back him as he readies to finish the fight. In a critical motion, he cuts across the fiend lord, his blow immense the beast regardless the surrounding tempest. Applying instantaneous transfer, Dick changes positions outside the foe. The tornado no longer hinders him, space meaningless as he controls the battleground entirely. With progressed teleportation mastered, Dick completes the method and carries the Fiend Lord away for good. The Fiend Lord's frame falls inside severed pieces, shadowy fluid opening as its shape ultimately loses power. A blonde ally triggers anti-regeneration mana. Level divided, the corpse tries to restore itself, but the magic suppresses it, departing solely a fading mana rock. With the danger finished, Dick shifts towards his allies, seeing Shelley senseless in the blonde woman's arms. Worry replaces strain as he nears, asking whether curing mana was applied on her. The mana ring abruptly glows, attracting Dick's focus as Shelley gradually recovers awareness. Awakening in uncertainty, she hurries ahead and clings tightly to her sister. Shaken with ease, tears ooze as the sisters hug, seeing the fight has truly finished and the threat has passed. Guarding silently, Dick verifies all is secure, his strained face ultimately soothing. Lacking requesting focus, he shifts off from them, departing the reunion to maintain back him. Dick offers his cloak to the sisters, seeing their ripped attire following the fight. They stare in abrupt awkwardness as they realize the condition of their outfits. Realizing the condition, a ally suggests applying the cloak as the sisters stay flustered clothes. Zekt apologizes to Dick, but he calms him that he fulfilled his role well. Companions show thanks for protecting them when they were failing to shift, and Dick recognizes everyone's efforts. The sisters insist they were not at fault, as Dick states that each member supports a party in distinct ways. Session their speech, he moves aside silently, glad that they grasp each other. The blonde lady bows and apologizes anew, taking duty for empowering the past human who moved berserk. She remembers history incidents and admits that no apology sense is sufficient for what happened. Regardless this, the companions agree the tribunal's ruling and encourage her to lift her face. The sisters affirm Dick's sincerity, seeing the honesty in his desperate face and the worry he displayed as curing. They conclude the real fault rests with whoever allowed Clive to flee and reach the labyrinth. Dick offers a stolen letter and association tag, indicating aristocrats could have orchestrated the incident. Evidence gestures towards trio aristocrats, creating doubt regarding their motives for driving Clive. As the implications stop, strain stands over secret schemes and unresolved injuries from the ordeal. Dick examines the shining mana ring, deciding that Clive's beastly change. Close, Lotte smiles softly, holding her cloak near, calmed as the mystery surrounding the wound starts to plane. Dick told the party to arrival to the 6th level and report, preferring to stay beside the ruins to manage the result. Injured companions relaxed as he evaluated their stamina and chose to grip the odd emblem briefly. A youthful lady moved ahead, attracting his focus, steady determination displayed in her confront as she requested to help regardless limited power. He took her resolve, telling she was hardly a burden. Dick softly set his palm on Lotta's face, noting her effort throughout the task and giving silent awareness. Shaken by the gesture, she bowed her confront, trying to handling upward emotions. Abruptly, anger erupted from her as she hit his torso. Regret trailed rapidly, and she apologized for confusion, his motives as companions observed from a space. Departed in quiet, Dick thought on his conduct, seeing he had treated her too far like a child. Dick stood quietly as an ally criticized his inability to grasp a maiden's heart. Upon reaching the 8th level, he carried an exhausted friend as companions trailed. Outside the corridor, a tranquil lakeside seemed where elegant elf women quietly arranged tea beside the water. Single elf greeted them warmly, giving a tent for the wounded and indicating relax by the shore. With gentle allure, she suggested meal or a tub, departing Dick stunned by the abrupt hospitality. Dick learned the aqua lurker had created abrupt rain across a ritual, describing the lake's abrupt alter in mood. Although the beast was frail, the rainfall disrupted ideas, prompting the elves to distribute arranged swimsuits from storage. Earlier receiving single, a girl impulsively leaped inside the lake, chasing the fleeing monster lacking doubt. Awkwardness crossed Dick's mind, but he alert as the elf described the monster's energy was too weak to detect. Turning towards Cody, he arranged to answer, restless by her proximity and the chaotic condition. Cody stood earlier Dick in a swimsuit, describing she no longer wished to hide her emotions. An elf commented that Cody displayed courage, pressing Dick to answer safely as watching the strain among them. Talk turned to their extended relationship, departing Dick puzzled regarding how obvious her emotions had been. Teasing remarks highlighted his lack of knowledge, rendering him flustered beneath everyone's scrutiny. Different girls shyly questioned if she yet appeared childish, and Dick calmed her softly. Dick noticed Yuma's growth likened to ages earlier, and the understanding departed him momentarily restless. Rain ceased following the aqua lurker was guided off, and he attempted to firm his ideas within the uncertainty. Aileen appeared from the lake soaked, ignorant of how hitting she seemed as he instinctively reached ahead. Shocked by his motion, she froze as water dripped in strong quiet among them. Companions rapidly stepped, scolding the condition and restoring order. Earlier his calm faltered more. Maralka's face darkened as Dick felt her upward anger, rapidly insisting the incident had been accidental. Strain remained about the lakeside base as companions asked him to talk rather of waiting helplessly. Preferring escape, he carried supplies towards the tent, choosing to attention on his settling allies. Within, Shelley and Lot rested awake, and he greeted them silently as checking their state. He gave sandwiches, encouraging them to eat and recover power as steady slowly reverted to the base. Within the tent, Dick cautiously reached towards Lottie, hesitating as he waited for her acceptance. Overcome with guilt, she apologized for harsh speech spoken prior as Shelley observed silently close. Quietly, Dick confessed he described duty, describing that anger and poor timing created misunderstandings among them. Lot heard in quiet as he calmed her that her emotions were valid and not misplaced. Ultimately, she admitted her great distrust of men, showing remaining agony she hardly sought to practice anew. Lot recalled a person called Clive, whose appearance formerly filled her with dread and hatred. Earlier knowing Dick, she believed each person carried the equal cruelty she had saw in the history. Within the tent she disclosed the argue, gradually confessing their resentment was rooted in greater pain. Agony showed in her gaze as she faltered to talk the facts aloud. At last she admitted that they had been treated as a state and finally traded. Bound jointly, the pair sisters endured captivity, surviving harsh weeks as slaves. Under the shade of a large tent pitched near the woods, a young man sat between two women. One of them, seated at his side, rested her hand gently near him while the other, positioned across from him with an ornate hair accessory catching the light, looked on with quiet attention. The mood inside the tent felt calm, as though something important was about to be shared. The story began far from that peaceful tent, in the slums on the outskirts of the royal capital. Crooked wooden shacks leaned against each other along a narrow dirt path. A woman with pale hair started to speak, explaining that she and her sister had been born and raised in that very place. Their mother had raised them entirely on her own, for reasons never fully explained. Life offered little comfort, and surviving each day required constant effort. Despite the hardship, she cradled her two infant daughters close, wrapped snugly in cloth, doing everything she could to protect them. Even amid poverty, warmth existed within their small household. Having their mother and older sister nearby was enough to bring happiness into their daily lives. The younger girls watched as their sister worked, stirring a pot over the fire, grateful simply for the family they had. That fragile happiness held together until they turned 10 years old. Two small figures huddled together on a worn bed, seeking comfort in each other's presence. Yet peace of that kind rarely lasted, and their world was about to change forever. Their mother succumbed to an epidemic that swept through the slums, leaving the sisters devastated and alone. Elsewhere, a man complained bitterly, asking what he was supposed to do with two orphaned children suddenly left in his care. The man, revealed to be their only living relative, argued that he had no real choice but to take them in. He grumbled about debts piling up because of the plague, making clear that their presence was an unwelcome burden rather than an act of kindness. As the girls stood pressed together, frightened and uncertain, the man debated their fate out loud. He suggested that selling them to a brothel might at least help pay off some of what he owed, reasoning coldly that despite their ragged appearance, they were still girls who could fetch a price. He brought them instead to a grand estate, its iron gates and polished stone facade a stark contrast to the slums they came from. Standing before an unfamiliar figure inside, the girls waited nervously as the man who owned the estate studied them with an appraising hum. The estate owner rejected the offer outright, gripping one of the girls by the head. Another man countered that although they looked frail now, they would surely grow into fine women within 5 years, hoping that argument might change the outcome. The owner refused to be persuaded. He explained that times were too difficult to justify feeding 2 children for 5 years merely to fatten them up for future profit. Studying the girl before him, he noted how thin and worn she appeared, insisting that even the most eccentric client wouldn't consider taking someone in such condition, since she would break down quickly and become useless to anyone. The girl's tattered shirt slipped slightly as the man's hand reached toward her collar. A single word, "Indeed," hung in the air, followed by, "however," suggesting his judgment wasn't yet final. Wide-eyed and trembling, she braced herself for whatever would come next. Running his fingers along her arm, he observed that her joints remained flexible despite her frailty. Though she lacked flesh, he noted, she showed no visible signs of illness, a detail that seemed to shift his consideration toward a different possibility entirely. He continued, remarking that their bodies, if properly trained, could still be made useful. Turning to his companion, another man raised the idea of selling them as sword slaves, asking directly what he thought of pursuing that option instead of the brothel. The companion agreed without hesitation, assuring that they would purchase the girls for the same price a brothel would offer. He added that demand for female and child sword slaves had unexpectedly grown in recent times, making the arrangement seem like a stroke of luck to the men negotiating over the sisters' futures. Because they had been fed so little, the sisters narrowly avoided being sold into a brothel. Kneeling beside a burial site sometime later, wearing armor now instead of rags, the woman explained that after their mother's death, the brief weeks spent with their relatives had been miserable, yet in hindsight, what happened afterward might have counted as a blessing hidden within misfortune. She went on to describe what sword slaves actually were, fighters forced to battle in arenas purely for the entertainment of certain nobles. Even so, she admitted that life as a sword slave was far from easy, carrying its own weight of hardship despite avoiding the fate they had feared. In a dusty arena, a fighter lay sprawled on the ground beside a discarded weapon, her expression hardened despite exhaustion. Addressing the young man listening to her story, she asked whether he knew what conditions were truly like in the underground arena where they had once been sold. Losers in that arena faced brutal consequences at the hands of the victors, stripped of any dignity the moment they fell. Female sword slaves in particular endured treatment that left lasting scars, a harsh reality of the world they had been forced into. Determined never to suffer that fate again, even against opponents far larger and stronger than themselves, the sisters pushed their bodies to the limit. Bound by chains as part of their brutal training, one sister gripped a whip, while the other braced against the restraints, both driven by the same desperate resolve to survive whatever came next. Dick sat quietly with the two sisters, reflecting on everything he had just learned. Records had told him the royal capital once passed through an age of darkness, yet he never imagined the two women beside him carried such a past. He asked, Considering the timeline of when they became gladiator slaves, whether that period didn't overlap with the abolition of such practices, since he recalled the law banning it had passed more than 6 years earlier. The older sister confirmed his suspicion, admitting that the chance for freedom the new law promised never actually reached them. Dick simply answered with a single word, acknowledging what she'd said as the weight of her past settled between them. Their fate had shifted because the Demon Lord's forces had appeared, throwing the kingdom into chaos and altering everything that would have otherwise unfolded for two ordinary sword slaves. Just days before they were meant to fight in the arena for the very first time, the younger sister turned to check on the other, asking softly if she was all right, as both stood among the other slaves awaiting their turn. Lotta declared that she had already made up her mind. She would fight, she would survive, and she would protect her sister with her own hands, speaking with a resolve that left no room for doubt. Her sister answered that she would do the same in return, promising to protect Lotte just as fiercely. They reminded each other that no matter what happened, the two of them would always remain together. Before either girl could step into the arena, armored knights arrived carrying a decree from the kingdom government. Standing before the gathered slaves, an official announced that a law passed in the recent assembly had officially abolished sword slaves along with any games or gambling built around them. Confusion spread through the crowd as the announcement's meaning sank in. One slave demanded to know what they were supposed to do now, while Lotte's sister asked in disbelief what exactly had just been said, unsure whether such a sudden change could really be true. An armored officer explained further, stating that given the immense threat posed by the Demon Lord's army closing in on the kingdom, the former slaves would instead be placed under the custody of the kingdom's army. The news struck like another blow entirely. A voice among the group protested that being ordered to fight monsters seemed worse than remaining a sword slave, while the officer continued regardless, explaining that they would be sent to the front lines against the Demon Lord's forces, with the promise that surviving combat there would earn them their freedom. Gripping each other's bandaged hands tightly, the sisters braced themselves for what felt like an even crueler fate. They had believed, in that moment, that they too were bound for the deadly front lines alongside everyone else. Before that could happen, a woman found them. She was introduced as the former guild master of the Red Gemini, and from that point forward, she became someone the sisters would come to call Mother. People knew her as an adventurer skilled in close combat, someone who specialized in subduing enemies without inflicting needless suffering. Though she often returned from battle dyed red with the blood of those she fought, she treated every member of her guild with genuine warmth, earning the nickname Bloody Mom for the contrast between her ferocity and her kindness. After the Demon Lord was finally defeated, Dick recalled catching a glimpse of her from a distance, during a royal audience where the kingdom honored those who had fought. The older sister remembered how their former master had raised them as her successors after taking them in. She used to say that when one god abandons a person, another will always come to pick them back up, delivering the words with a smile that had genuinely saved both sisters from despair. Eventually she entrusted the guild entirely to the two of them and departed without warning, leaving behind only a few scattered belongings and an unexplained note. Finishing her story, Lotta's sister admitted she hadn't truly wanted Dick to hear something so heavy. Dick thanked them both sincerely for trusting him with it, quietly absorbing everything they had shared. Reflecting on his own place among heroes, Lotte spoke up, insisting that someone like Dick had always walked in the light, certain that his path could never compare to the darkness they had endured. Dick disagreed, admitting that if he had made even one wrong turn, he might still be trapped in the mountains, forgotten by his own family and simply waiting to die alone. The only reason he stood where he did now, he explained, came down to the strange twists of fate that had shaped his life just as much as theirs. Surrounded by the members he'd gathered around him, Dick reflected that no one could accomplish much entirely alone. That belief, he explained, was exactly why he had wanted to build a guild of his own, bringing together people whose paths had been shaped by their own hardships and turning them into something stronger together. One sister could hardly believe what she just heard, insisting that Dick was surely the hero who saved the kingdom, as though such a thing couldn't possibly be true. Dick shook his head slightly and admitted that saving the kingdom wasn't something he could have ever managed alone. He credited the outcome to his comrades and to his master, whose guidance had carried him through. Curiosity got the better of the younger sister as she mentioned how impressive it seemed that Dick could wield so much magic and even use a sword, unlike the two of them who only knew how to fight with a whip or a flail. She wondered aloud whether she might try picking up a sword herself someday. Dick hesitated for a moment before answering that he would teach her if she truly wanted to learn, though he warned it wouldn't come as easily as she imagined. Mastering a blade, he explained, wasn't something a person picked up without real effort. Placing a hand gently on her head, Dick told her that whatever past she carried, he was simply glad both sisters were safe now. He added that from that point forward, she shouldn't hesitate to lean on him as well, just as he leaned on his own companions. The moment stirred something uncomfortable within her, memories flickering briefly of the pain both sisters had endured before finding their place beside him. Watching Dick comfort her sister so plainly, the older sister recalled how their former guild master used to hold them the very same way, a gesture that carried the same quiet warmth from years before. Startled by her own thoughts, she blurted out an apology, admitting she'd done it again without meaning to. Dick and the other sister turned toward her in surprise as she stumbled through an explanation, insisting it wasn't what they thought, and that she respected Dick deeply both as a guild master and as a fellow adventurer. Flustered by her own words, she pressed on with another apology, explaining she hadn't intended to sound so blunt earlier and hoped Dick wouldn't take offense. Dick reassured her there was truly nothing to worry about anymore. She admitted, somewhat sheepishly, that being called an idiot moments earlier had stung a little more than she wanted to let on, even as she insisted it wasn't a big deal. Pouting slightly with her cheeks puffed out, she muttered under her breath until the younger sister joined in, mimicking the same sulky expression beside her. Dick blinked at the sight of the two of them pouting together, caught off guard by their sudden teamwork. Reaching out, Dick patted her head gently, and she melted into an embarrassed little laugh at the gesture, her irritation fading almost instantly. Glancing sideways, she asked timidly whether that was enough affection for now, prompting Dick to pull his hand back with a startled reaction, unsure whether he'd overstepped. Noticing something odd about his expression afterward, she asked if there was something on her face, prompting Dick to stammer out a question of his own, uncertain what exactly had caught his attention. Both sisters leaned in closer together, eyes wide with anticipation, begging to see whatever it was that had left everyone else so amazed just moments before. Standing near the tent's entrance, one of the older members remarked that it might be better not to let anyone else see Dick looking the way he currently did, hinting at something unusual happening just out of sight. Another added that she could hardly believe it would end up looking like that. Confused, someone asked what exactly the fuss was about, insisting she had only pushed her hair up a little. A companion warned that the situation felt genuinely risky, cautioning that if Dick became fully aware of what was happening, things could quickly spiral out of control. For a brief moment, Dick's face shone with an almost radiant glow, his expression caught somewhere between surprise and quiet wonder. 4 girls stood together, each dressed in swimwear, their reactions ranging from bashful to utterly stunned as they processed whatever had just unfolded in front of them. One girl admitted that the scene truly was as remarkable as everyone claimed, insisting she had only adjusted her hair slightly, and questioning why everyone was reacting so strongly. Another voice praised Dick warmly, calling the moment wonderful, while someone else rushed over asking what on earth had happened to him. Reflecting quietly, one companion noted that she had often seen his sleeping face before but rarely witnessed him with his eyes open in quite that way, a sight she associated mostly with facing him directly as the Demon King. Another remarked with clear admiration that not even flinching at seeing her true form was exactly what she expected of her master, while a smaller voice chimed in playfully, calling him cute despite everything that had just occurred. One of the girls murmured under her breath, insisting it wasn't as though she snuck into his room every single night. She quickly corrected herself, admitting it was really only once a week, or perhaps closer to once every 2 days, her voice trailing off with a bashful smile as the thought clearly pleased her more than she wanted to let on. Standing self-consciously in her new outfit, Lotta admitted it was the first time she'd ever worn anything like a swimsuit. Dick observed quietly that this was indeed what a swimsuit looked like, while her sister reassured her that it suited her well, and told her not to worry. Lotta confessed that the amount of skin showing felt a little overwhelming, prompting a nearby comment that she seemed more bothered by the exposure than anyone else, especially since Dick was the only man present. Verlaine explained that since everyone's gear had been shredded, they would simply have to make do with what they had for the time being. One of the sisters thanked her sincerely, acknowledging how much she had done to take care of them in every way. Turning her attention elsewhere, Verlaine mentioned she'd left off telling a story about something she'd witnessed the other day in their lord's room, prompting curiosity from the girl beside her about what exactly she meant. Watching the sisters interact from a distance, Verlaine smiled and remarked how nice it was to see the younger ones enjoying themselves. Dick, overhearing part of the conversation, hoped quietly that Verlaine wasn't saying anything unnecessary about him. When Verlaine asked directly whether he had any comment about her own swimsuit, Dick found himself sidestepping the question by shifting the topic entirely. Dick admitted, somewhat awkwardly, that the water felt refreshing, recalling how the two of them used to swim together in a river long ago. The memory sharpened suddenly as he realized they had both been completely unclothed back then, a detail that caught him off guard as the recollection played out vividly in his mind. Shifting the conversation back to more pressing matters, Dick brought up the topic of Shelley, believing the altar they'd encountered had reacted specifically to her blood. He explained that the altar in question had been sealing a fragment of the serpent's spirit, and that Shelley seemed to have borrowed power directly from that same serpent. He wondered aloud whether that meant Shelley had somehow absorbed the serpent's power into herself. Verlaine reassured him gently not to worry too much, agreeing that his theory sounded correct based on what they knew. The two sisters discussed the implications between themselves, agreeing that this discovery shouldn't necessarily mean Shelley had become their enemy. One asked the other directly whether she sensed any trace of evil aura coming from her, wanting to be certain. Sitting together beneath the trees, Dick agreed that the safest course of action was to stay close to Shelley for a while and keep a careful watch over her, admitting quietly that becoming an enemy seemed unlikely given everything they'd observed. Verlaine's expression shifted as she mentioned there was something else on her mind that she wanted to discuss with him as well. She confessed that her real reason for joining him inside this particular labyrinth went deeper than she'd previously let on. Dick responded calmly, telling her he had already sensed as much. She explained that she had initially believed conquering the labyrinth and defeating the serpent might help reduce the severity of someone's sentence, a burden she had carried since realizing the connection between the two. Flashing back 2,000 years, a memory surfaced of nobles standing before a council, wondering aloud whether something more significant lay behind the events of that trial. As a member of the first King Albein's party, Verlaine had once taken part in sealing away the very threat they now faced again. She revealed that being sent to face the serpent, whose true form lay hidden within the labyrinth, represented a form of punishment for someone close to her. Without that person's aid, conquering the labyrinth would prove nearly impossible. The seal protecting the underground labyrinth beneath the royal capital, forged 2,000 years earlier, was steadily approaching its breaking point. Long ago, survivors of an ancient lineage created by the gods as living avatars still walked among them, and the one they now watched over sleeping quietly was very likely counted among those dispatched ones. Recalling the altar once more, Dick repeated his belief that it had reacted to Shelley's blood, since it had been sealing a fragment of the serpent's spirit all along. Verlaine added solemnly that blood represented life itself, and that the sealed serpent responded naturally to any sign of living essence. She continued, explaining that whoever sealed the serpent long ago must have sacrificed their own life in the process, referring to a comrade Dick had once mentioned but who had been left out of official historical records entirely. Turning to her, Dick asked gently if he could ask her something further, and Verlaine promised she would answer honestly, whatever it might be. He asked carefully whether that person had been one of the ones left behind, much like Verlaine herself, referring back to another member of that ancient party she had once told him about. Verlaine confirmed that he had figured it out correctly. She explained that the very friend who had sealed the serpent 2,000 years ago now waited quietly at the bottom of the labyrinth, and that this time, it would fall to her to take that friend's place. She admitted that fighting alongside him brought her more happiness than she had ever felt during her time with her old party, expressing genuine contentment simply being able to enter the labyrinth together with everyone. She reminded him gently that he had once promised her he would live until the very day she died. Reflecting on everything she had longed for, Verlaine confessed that this moment was exactly what she had always wanted. Dick's expression hardened as he insisted she deserved far more than that, but Verlaine cut him off firmly, telling him that such a thing shouldn't be, her resolve settling heavily over the scene as the tension between them deepened. Verlaine insisted quietly that for someone like her, this much was already more than enough. Brushing her hair back, she added that it wasn't right to ask for anything more, especially for one who had lived as long as she had. Sitting close beside him on a fallen log, she addressed him directly, telling him there was something she wanted to say. Dick admitted that being relied upon by others had never actually bothered him. He confessed that hadn't changed even now, despite always believing he never wanted to stand out. He reflected on the simple rhythm of running the tavern each day, handling everyday requests alongside the occasional surprising one, and watching familiar regulars walk through the door. For Verlaine, the most important thing was continuing to live the days she had envisioned without ever growing tired of them. She described handling problems as inconspicuously as possible, finding satisfaction in proving she could solve even the toughest challenges quietly. She admitted that even if she returned to peaceful days, losing someone along the way would leave everything feeling incomplete and worthless to her. That belief was exactly why she couldn't accept the idea of her comrades, or anyone close to her, getting hurt simply to save the kingdom. Verlaine's tone grew firmer as she addressed him directly, declaring that even if he himself were prepared to accept such a sacrifice, that fact didn't change anything for her. She refused outright to obey a will that would let him give up on living. She vowed to do everything within her power to ensure he stayed alive, calling it the one thing she would never compromise on, no matter how selfish that resolve might seem. Looking at him with quiet admiration, she remarked that he had truly become someone worthy of respect, adding softly that he had grown so much since she last knew him. Flustered by her praise, Dick tried to deny it, insisting that wasn't true, though he struggled to finish his thought. She continued anyway, pointing out how much he had accomplished working alongside everyone in her absence, admitting it almost felt presumptuous for her to still call herself his master. She reminded him bluntly how reckless his plan sounded, given how incredibly strong the serpent was and how limited their options were for putting it to sleep. Dick countered that he had, after all, already returned once from defeating the Demon King, and asked her to let him be reckless just this one time. She asked if that reasoning was really good enough for him. Dick answered with quiet determination, declaring he would use every bit of power he had to save everything that could still be saved. Reaching out toward her, Dick extended his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Verlaine reached back, their fingers meeting in a silent gesture of agreement between them. She let out a soft, satisfied sound, her expression easing into a gentle smile as their hands remained joined. Walking together afterward, she addressed him formally as Master Dono, her tone carrying a mix of familiarity and lingering respect for the bond they now shared. Nearby, another companion declared that she would teach any threat the aesthetics of destruction, warning that she was nowhere near as gentle as Dick when it came to defending him. She added confidently that she understood firsthand the power her master and his companions possessed to overturn the impossible, having once been defeated by it herself, and promised that if the kingdom ever dared interfere with him again, there was nothing left to fear as long as she handled it. One of the girls thanked both companions sincerely for their protection. Another quickly protested that she didn't watch over Dick constantly the way Verlaine apparently did, prompting a quiet response thanking her simply for always keeping an eye on him. Dick interrupted with mock seriousness, insisting he couldn't ignore someone referring to him as yours. One of the girls stammered defensively that he merely had value as a subject worth observing, admitting she only checked on him once in a while. Gathering everyone together, one of the girls asked cheerfully whether it was time to head toward the next floor. Another added warmly that they should all go together, inviting him along as the group prepared to continue their journey side by side.